My sister said it the second time in a neurologist's examination room. It was just a very convenient diagnosis, Tessa told Dr. Shaw, leaning forward in the visitor's chair as if they were two reasonable women trying to solve the problem of me. That's all I'm saying. My father stared at the anatomical poster behind the doctor's shoulder. It showed a brain opened into neat colored sections, which was probably easier for him to look at than my face. Dr. Shaw set down her pen. Convenient. For whom? Tessa's mouth opened, then closed. She had come prepared to list the things I could still do, not explain why she was entitled to them. Dad finally looked at me. 4 weeks earlier, when Tessa had first used that word, he had agreed with her before I'd even finished my dinner. Now he looked less certain, but uncertainty wasn't an apology. It was just the first crack in a story he had found comfortable. I remember thinking, if he understands now, I might hate him more, because then I would know he could have understood all along. 6 weeks earlier, I was standing in Dad's kitchen with no feeling in 3 fingers and pretending the grocery bag wasn't slipping. Eggs go on the second shelf, he said. I know where your eggs go. You put them in the door last time. 1 time, Dad. And 2 cracked. They were alive when I left. He took the carton from me and opened it to inspect them, turning each egg with the concentration of a jeweler examining stolen diamonds. My father, Frank Bennett, trusted cashiers, television meteorologists, and anyone wearing a tool belt. He did not trust his daughters with eggs. At 68, he still had broad shoulders and thick gray hair that made strangers assume he was healthier than he was. His right hip had been grinding down for years, but he'd treated pain like a telemarketer. If he ignored it long enough, surely it would stop calling. It had not. His replacement surgery was scheduled for the following month, and the refrigerator was already covered in instructions. Pre-op appointment, blood work, stop aspirin, wash with the special soap, no food after midnight. Dad had underlined that one twice, possibly because he believed the hospital might make an exception if he demonstrated sufficient outrage. I slid a carton of milk onto the second shelf and flexed my right hand behind the refrigerator door. Nothing. My thumb worked. My pinky worked. The middle 3 felt packed with cold sand. You bought the wrong sour cream, Dad said. It's sour cream. It's light. That's what they recommended at your cardiac checkup. That man recommends sadness. I laughed despite myself. Dad smiled, pleased he'd gotten me. This was how he could be. Difficult, funny, and suddenly so familiar that loving him felt less like a choice than a reflex. My phone buzzed on the counter. Tessa. Are you still at Dad's? I typed with my left hand. Me. Yes. Tessa. Good. Remind him I'm coming Sunday. Me. Today is Sunday. 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Tessa. Next Sunday, obviously. My sister was 4 years older than me and somehow lived in a world where dates moved around to accommodate tone. She worked in corporate communications, which meant she could write a 5-paragraph email about accountability without accepting any herself. She was also warm, quick-witted, and almost impossible not to enjoy when she wanted to be enjoyed. Tessa remembered the name of every coworker I disliked. She could imitate Dad's annoyed breathing so perfectly that I'd once had to pull over because I was laughing too hard to drive. When our mother died, Tessa slept beside me in my bed for 3 nights, though we were 34 and 30, because neither of us could stand the silence in our own rooms. Then the funeral ended. Tessa went back to her life, and I became the person Dad called when the washing machine made a noise. I put away the rest of the groceries while Dad followed me with his list. The hospital says somebody has to stay the first night, he said. I saw that. Probably more than one. Probably. The first week is the rough one, so they keep telling us. He leaned against the counter, favoring his left side. I was thinking we ought to set up the downstairs room for you. I shut the pantry door. For me? You're not going to want to drive back and forth every day. He said it like he was offering me an ocean view. Dad, I have work. You work from home Wednesdays, 1 day a week, and you've got vacation time. I looked at him. He looked genuinely puzzled by my hesitation, which was worse than if he'd been manipulative. Manipulation would have meant he recognized I had something to give up. How long are you thinking? I asked. We'll see how recovery goes. 2 weeks. 3. You just said the first week. Well, I'm not going to be tap dancing on day 8. My hand tingled sharply, a burst of pins running from my knuckles to my wrist. I gripped the edge of the counter. Dad noticed. What? Nothing. My hand fell asleep. How does a hand fall asleep while you're standing? Very quietly. He gave me the look that meant I was being smart to avoid a practical conversation. Tessa can cover some evenings. She already said so. That surprised me enough that I reached for my phone. Dad waved a hand. Don't bother her today. She and Evan are at that food festival. Of course they are. She's been looking forward to it. I look forward to things. I didn't say you didn't. No, you just scheduled me for 3 weeks of live-in nursing because my calendar lacks artisanal mustard. Dad's face tightened. I'm having surgery, Mara. There it was. Not anger exactly. Injury. He could turn any boundary into evidence that I had failed to notice he was mortal. I know, I said. You think I enjoy needing help? No. Then why are you making me beg? I stared at him. He had not asked me a question until that moment, and even then, the question was why I hadn't already said yes. But his pain was real. I'd watched him stop taking the basement stairs. I'd seen him stand outside his car for a full minute, gathering himself before lowering into the seat. The surgery scared him. Frank Bennett would rather accuse someone of selfishness than admit he was scared. I'll figure it out, I said. His shoulders loosened. I knew I could count on you. It should have felt like gratitude. Instead, it landed like a door locking. That night, I woke because my right foot was burning. Not hot, burning. The sensation ran across the top of it like I'd spilled boiling water under the blanket. I kicked the covers away and reached down, expecting swelling or a rash. My skin looked normal. I stood and almost hit the dresser. My leg held me, but a beat too late, as if the message had taken the long way down. I grabbed the wall and waited. After 30 seconds, the room stopped tilting. After a minute, my foot felt like a foot again. I did what sensible adults do when their body behaves like a haunted appliance at 2 a.m. I went back to bed and searched the internet. The results ranged from tight shoes to imminent death. I chose tight shoes, even though I'd been barefoot. At work Monday, my vision blurred while I was reading a spreadsheet. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and enlarged the document to 150%. The words sharpened. Then they doubled. I closed my left eye. Fine. I closed my right. Fine again. With both eyes open, the numbers slid sideways. My phone rang before I could decide whether that was medically interesting. Dad. Did you call the orthopedic office? He asked. Good morning. I need to know whether I can take my blood pressure pill the day of surgery. It's on the sheet. Which sheet? The yellow one on your refrigerator. They gave me 6 sheets. The one that says medication instructions. They all say instructions. I pinched the bridge of my nose. The office behind me hummed with ordinary Monday sounds. Keyboards, the copier, somebody shaking ice in a metal bottle. I wanted my body to go back to being one of those sounds, unnoticed and reliable. I'll call them, I said, and ask about the walker. What about it? Whether I really need one. You really need one. I want to hear them say it. You heard them say it at the appointment. I want to hear them say it again. After we hung up, I called the orthopedic office, then the pharmacy, then Dad again. By noon, the double vision had eased, and I used its disappearance as proof that it had never mattered. Tessa called that evening while I was sitting in my car outside the grocery store. Dad says you're moving in after surgery. Dad says a lot of things. So that's a yes? I'm trying to work it out. I can take Tuesdays, she said brightly. All of them? Don't make it weird. You know what I mean. No, I don't. Tuesday evenings. Probably. Unless I'm traveling. How generous. She exhaled into the phone. Mara, I'm offering. You're offering the portion that fits around your life. Dad offered him my life. You're better with medical stuff. I'm not better with medical stuff. I read the papers people hand me. Exactly. I watched a woman wrestle a cart free from the row, yank too hard, and nearly ram it into a parked truck. She looked around to see if anyone had noticed. I looked away to grant her dignity. Tess, I haven't been feeling right. Her tone changed immediately. What do you mean? There was my sister, the one who had slept beside me after Mom died. I told her about my hand. I mentioned the vision, but lightly, making it sound more like eye strain than something that had scared me into shutting my office door. You need to get that checked, she said. I know, I'm serious. I said I know. Call tomorrow. I'll remind you. For a moment, relief rose so fast it embarrassed me. Then she added, because we really need to know what's going on before Dad's surgery. Dad's surgery. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. Mara, I'm here. Don't get mad. I'm worried about you. I know. And about the timing. I lifted my head. What does that mean? It means he's counting on us. Us was a word Tessa used when work needed to be assigned and I was standing closest to it. I'll call a doctor, I said. Promise? Yes. She softened. Good. I love you. I love you too. That was the worst part of us. We rarely lied about that. I went inside for the sour cream Dad had texted me about. Full fat this time, because apparently saturated fat was the last freedom available to an American man approaching hip surgery. The store was crowded, and the fluorescent lights seemed unusually sharp. I made it through dairy, paper towels, and the exact brand of decaf Dad claimed tasted less like punishment. Near the checkout, my right leg dragged, only for a step, then another. I abandoned the cart and headed for the exit, suddenly desperate for cold air. The automatic doors opened. Sunlight struck my eyes so hard that the parking lot vanished into white. My knee buckled between two parked cars. I caught myself on a bumper, but my hand slid. The pavement came up fast, knocking the breath out of me. A woman carrying a bag of oranges crouched beside me. Don't move yet, she said. I'm calling someone. No, I'm okay. You're on the ground. My family doesn't consider that conclusive. She didn't laugh. Her hand stayed firmly on my shoulder. My phone began ringing inside my purse. Dad's name glowed through the open zipper. I knew exactly what he wanted. I had left his sour cream in the cart. I let the phone ring until it stopped. The woman with the oranges was named Denise. I learned this because she introduced herself 3 times while I argued that I didn't need an ambulance. You fell, she said. I tripped. Over what? I looked between the cars. The pavement was clean except for one flattened drinking straw 6 feet away. Possibly that. Denise followed my gaze. You want to try again? My right leg was waking up in prickling waves. I could move my toes, which felt encouraging until I realized I was still sitting on asphalt behind a stranger's Subaru. I have somebody I can call. Call them. Dad's name appeared again. I declined the call and chose Tessa. She answered over restaurant noise. Did you get the sour cream? I fell in the parking lot. The background vanished as if she'd clapped a hand over the phone. Are you hurt? I don't think so. What happened? My leg stopped working right. Silence. Then her voice became brisk. Where are you? Denise took my phone and gave Tessa the address because I was apparently no longer a credible witness to my own location. Tessa said she was 12 minutes away. She arrived in 9, wearing white pants and an expression that suggested she planned to personally discipline my nervous system. Evan drove. He got out first and opened the back door without asking questions. My brother-in-law was a patient man with a narrow face and the permanently cautious posture of someone who had married into weather. Tessa crouched in front of me. Can you stand? I think so. That isn't an answer. It's the one I have. She and Denise helped me up. My leg held, though it trembled. Denise made me promise I would go directly to an emergency room before she surrendered me. I'm 36, I muttered once I was in Evan's car. She can't legally surrender me. She should have made you wear a tag. Tessa said. Her joke came out too sharp. She was frightened. Dad called again as Evan pulled away. Tessa looked at the screen in my hand. Answer him. If I tell him I fell, he'll panic. He'll worry. There's a difference. With Dad? She took the phone from me and answered. Hi, it's me. I watched her face while Dad spoke. It shifted from concern to disbelief. No, Mara's here. She fell outside the store. A pause. No, she didn't get the sour cream. Tessa closed her eyes. Dad, I'm taking her to the ER. Another pause. I understand you don't have any for dinner. Evan glanced at me in the mirror. I pressed my lips together. No, do not drive there yourself, Tessa said. Your hip is bad and we're going in the opposite direction. Dad said something longer. You have cottage cheese. She hung up. For 3 full seconds, none of us spoke. Then Evan said, I'm not sure cottage cheese is the emotional substitute you think it is. I started laughing. Tessa tried not to. It lasted until my vision doubled again and Evan's head became 2 narrow, cautious heads above the driver's seat. The emergency room was crowded, but the words, sudden weakness and double vision moved me ahead of a man loudly demanding treatment for a fishing hook in his palm. A nurse put me in a wheelchair. Tessa held my purse and answered questions I could answer myself. No diabetes, she said. No history of seizures. The nurse looked at me. No diabetes, I confirmed. No seizures. Tessa's mouth tightened. They checked my blood pressure, made me follow a finger with my eyes, push against hands, pull against hands, smile, frown, and explain 4 separate times exactly what I meant by numb. A young doctor ordered blood work and a scan of my head. The scan ruled out the immediate catastrophes everyone was carefully not naming, but it did not explain what was happening. You need a neurological evaluation, he said, promptly. Like this month? I asked. Like we're putting in a referral tonight. Tessa sat straighter. For what? There are several possibilities. Migraine can cause neurological symptoms, vitamin deficiencies, inflammatory conditions, demyelinating disease. What's that? I asked. It means damage to the protective covering around nerves. I don't want you searching that phrase and deciding you have every condition that comes up. Too late, Tessa said. She already diagnosed herself with tight shoes. The doctor did not laugh. Until she's evaluated, she shouldn't drive if the vision changes or the weakness returns. I need to drive, I said. I understand. No, I mean my father is having hip surgery. He waited for the rest. He needs help. Tessa spoke quietly. Mara. The doctor rolled his stool closer. Then your family will need another plan. He said it without cruelty, but I felt scolded. It seemed absurd that a stranger could dismiss a plan around which 3 adults had already arranged their expectations. The blood tests showed nothing dramatic. By the time I was discharged, my vision had cleared, and my leg worked well enough that walking to the car felt like an embarrassing performance. I half expected Tessa to ask whether we'd overreacted. Instead, she looped her arm through mine. You're staying with us tonight. I can go home. You're not going home alone. I have stairs at home, not wolves. You fell in a flat parking lot. Evan brought the car around. I leaned against Tessa, too tired to keep resisting. At their house, she gave me one of her t-shirts and put clean sheets on the guest bed while Evan made toast. She set a glass of water on the nightstand, then moved it twice until she was satisfied I could reach it without standing. Did this happen before? She asked. Not the falling, the numbness, the eye thing. My hand's been weird for a few weeks. Her face hardened. Weeks? It came and went? And you didn't call anyone? I had things going on. So does everybody. I looked at her. She heard it too. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? I meant you don't get to scare me like this because you were busy buying Dad groceries. I didn't do it to scare you. Then why didn't you tell me? I did tell you. In the parking lot, right before you fell. Timing has never been my strength. She sat on the edge of the bed. Without makeup, her face looked softer and more tired. You're supposed to tell me before it gets bad. I wanted to ask why. So she could help? So she could worry? So she could remind me to make a call between the tasks she had already decided were mine. Instead, I said, I didn't know it was bad. She reached over and squeezed my ankle through the blanket, testing that I could feel her hand. I'll go to the neurologist with you, she said. You don't have to. I know. That answer mattered. The next morning, Dad called at 7:14. How are you? Better? What did they say? They want me to see a neurologist. Why? Because of the numbness and the vision. I get numbness in my foot when I sit in the recliner. Tessa told you I fell, right? She said your knee gave out. Mine does that. Your hip needs replacing. Exactly. Bodies do things. He was trying to reassure me. I knew that. Frank's comfort came disguised as dismissal because acknowledging danger made him feel responsible for stopping it. He cleared his throat. Did they say you can drive? Not if my vision changes. But right now, I can see. Good. I've got that joint class at 2. I lay in Tessa's guest bed, looking at the water glass she had placed within easy reach. You want me to take you? The parking garage is confusing. I was in the emergency room last night. I know, that's why I asked how you were. No, you asked whether I could drive. That is not what happened. It was exactly what had happened. But his indignation was so sincere that I began rearranging the conversation for him. Maybe his first question counted. Maybe concern did not stop being concern because it led directly to a request. I'll see how I feel, I said. Tessa stood in the doorway, already dressed for work. She had heard enough to understand. No, she said loudly. Dad went quiet. Is that your sister? She's not driving you, Tessa called. I'll send you a car. I'm not getting in a car with some stranger. You were willing to have your neurologically compromised daughter drive you. I didn't know she was compromised. You have literally never listened to a doctor in your life, but suddenly you need one to certify that falling is bad. I put Dad on speaker before my ear caught fire. You don't need to make me sound heartless, he said. I'm not doing that, Tessa replied. I'm describing Tuesday. Dad hung up. Tessa looked triumphant for half a second. Then she looked at me. What? Nothing. Say it. I was just wondering who's taking him. Her laugh had no humor in it. Unbelievable. He does need to go. So now I'm the bad daughter if I don't cancel my day. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Evan appeared behind her, tying his shoes. I can take Frank at 2. Relief washed over both of us so quickly that we avoided his eyes. That was the family talent, finding the nearest soft place for a hard obligation to land. The neurology office called that afternoon. A cancellation had opened with Dr. Elena Shaw on Friday. I accepted before asking how I would get there. Tessa couldn't come. Her company had a quarterly presentation she had spent weeks preparing. She offered to reschedule the appointment, then grew frustrated when I refused. I said I'd go with you. You also have a job. So do you. I'll take a sick day. And drive yourself? I'll get a ride. From who? I know people. You know Dad. I know other people. In the end, Evan drove me. He sat in the waiting room answering emails while Dr. Shaw asked me questions nobody had asked in the ER. Had I ever lost vision before? Had I experienced unexplained tingling, weakness, dizziness, bladder changes, fatigue? Everybody's tired, I said. That isn't an answer, she replied. Apparently it was contagious. She tested my reflexes and watched me walk heel to toe. She tapped my right knee, then did it again. Afterward, she pulled her rolling chair close enough that our knees almost touched. I want an MRI of your brain and cervical spine with contrast. What are you looking for? Evidence of inflammation or damage affecting the central nervous system. That sounds bad. It sounds like something we should understand. I scheduled the MRI for the earliest available slot. Dad complained because it was the morning of his final pre-op appointment, and I had promised to go with him. I can ask Tessa, he said in a tone that implied I had forced him to contact an unreliable contractor. You should. She doesn't take notes like you do. Then she can take different notes. Tessa went. She sent me 14 text messages from the appointment, 9 of them questions whose answers were printed on the yellow sheet. I lay inside the MRI machine with my head locked in place, listening to the mechanical banging, and answered everyone. The results took 2 days. Dr. Shaw called while I was at work and asked if I could come in that afternoon. Her nurse had already left a voicemail, and there was a second call from the imaging center. 3 calls in 11 minutes had a grammar of their own. Evan was unavailable. Tessa said she could leave work if it was truly urgent, then immediately apologized for the word truly. I told her I would take a car. Dr. Shaw had the images open when I entered. White shapes glowed against gray slices of my brain. She did not make me wait through small talk. The MRI shows multiple lesions, she said. Their location and appearance, together with your symptoms, are consistent with multiple sclerosis. I stared at the screen. How multiple? She turned away from the images and faced me fully. This is treatable, Mara. But we need to start talking about treatment now. My phone vibrated in my lap. Dad, ask how long it'll take. Tessa needs your schedule for after surgery. I turned the phone face down. Dr. Shaw waited. My father's having hip surgery in 3 weeks, I said. She glanced at the phone, then back at me. Is he your primary concern right now? The answer was obviously supposed to be no. I still had to think about it. He's counting on me. For what? Driving, meals, staying with him while he recovers. Is there someone else who can do those things? My sister. Dr. Shaw's expression did not change, which made me feel more exposed than sympathy would have. She has a demanding job, I added. So do you. I almost laughed. Have you met her? No, I'm listening to you. She pulled up another image. There were white spots near the center of my brain and another farther back, innocent-looking flecks that might have been dust on the monitor. One lesion was active, she explained. Others appeared older, which meant the burning foot and numb hand were not isolated events. My immune system had been attacking the protective coating around nerves, interrupting messages between my brain and the rest of me. I looked down at my right hand. Did I cause this by ignoring it? No. Did stress cause it? No. Stress can aggravate symptoms, but you did not give yourself multiple sclerosis by being busy. What about the fact that I waited? We can't know whether earlier treatment would have changed this flare. What matters is what you do next. What do I do next? She explained steroids to reduce the current inflammation, then disease-modifying treatments intended to reduce future attacks. There were injections, pills, and infusions, each with its own risks and practical complications. Blood tests, insurance approval, follow-up imaging. Words stacked on top of each other until I stopped being able to hold them. Am I going to end up in a wheelchair? I asked. It came out in a whisper. Dr. Shaw didn't rush to reassure me. Multiple sclerosis is unpredictable, she said. Many people remain active and independent for decades, especially with the treatments we have now. I can't promise you a particular course. I can promise that we'll treat the disease we see, monitor it, and make decisions based on evidence instead of fear. Evidence instead of fear sounded like a luxury. She asked whether I had someone who could stay with me during the steroid infusions. The treatments could be done at an infusion center, but fatigue, headaches, sleep problems, and mood changes were possible. I should not drive if the double vision or weakness returned. I needed to reduce physical strain until the flare settled. I'm supposed to stay at my father's after surgery. You've mentioned that. He can't be alone. Neither should you be if your symptoms worsen. The room became very quiet. It had not occurred to me that I could qualify as a person who should not be left alone. Dr. Shaw printed information, wrote down the name of a nurse coordinator, and circled the office number in blue ink. "Who are you calling when you leave?" she asked. "My sister." "Good. She'll ask how much I can still do. Then tell her what I told you." "That depends on which part she hears." Dr. Shaw tilted her head. "Which part do you think she'll hear?" I folded the papers even though they were already stapled. "The unpredictable part." In the parking lot, I sat on a concrete bench outside the medical building and watched people move between cars. A man in blue scrubs ate crackers while walking. An older woman argued with a parking meter. Everybody seemed offensively normal. I called Tessa. She answered before the first ring finished. What did she say? I have MS. There was a pause, then a sharp sound like she'd dropped something. What? Multiple sclerosis. No, I heard you. Are they sure? She's sure enough to start treatment. But you walked into the appointment. I can still walk. I know. That came out wrong. I pressed the heel of my hand against my eye. There are lesions on the MRI. One is active. Some are older. Tessa said my name, then started crying. That startled me more than the diagnosis had. Tessa was a loud crier in movies and a silent crier in real life. I listened to her breathe. I should have gone with you, she said. You had the presentation. Screw the presentation. How'd it go? Myra, I'm asking. It went fine. I don't care. Yes, you do. Not right now. I heard a door close on her end. Then her voice became firmer. Where are you? Outside the doctor's office. I'm coming. I took a car. I didn't ask how you got there. She arrived 25 minutes later with her office badge still clipped to her waistband. The moment she saw me, she crossed the sidewalk and wrapped both arms around me so tightly that the stapled papers crumpled between us. I let her hold me. For 1 minute, there was no surgery schedule, no dad, no calculation. She was my big sister, and I was sick, and she wished I wasn't. Then she pulled back and wiped under her eyes. What did the doctor say about Dad's surgery? The question hurt partly because she knew it would. She said, I need treatment and rest. So you can't help at all? I didn't say that. Well, what did she say specifically? I handed her the papers. Tessa scanned the first page while we stood on the sidewalk. Her face shifted into the focused expression she used when reviewing contracts. This says, activity as tolerated. It also says not to drive during vision changes or weakness. Right, obviously. We can work around that. We? She looked up. Yes, we. I'm not leaving you alone with this. The warmth of that sentence lasted less than a second because she continued. And Dad still needs surgery. We can't pretend that's not happening. I'm not pretending anything. Okay, I'm not fighting with you. I didn't know we were fighting. We're not. She folded the papers along the crease I'd made, then smoothed them against her thigh. Let's tell Dad together, she said. Dad asked us to come for dinner the following night. By asked, I mean, he told me there was chicken in his refrigerator that needed to be cooked before it went bad. When I arrived, Tessa was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. She'd brought a salad in a polished wooden bowl and left the chicken to me. You're drinking? I asked. It's one glass. I meant before this conversation. I'm nervous. Dad stood at the stove prodding a potato with a fork. Somebody want to tell me why I'm not allowed to know what's going on until everybody has a beverage. I put my bag on the counter. My treatment papers were inside, still creased from Tessa's hands. Sit down, Tessa said. Dad looked at her. I am capable of standing. Sit anyway. He lowered himself into his chair with a grimace he tried to hide. I moved toward him automatically, ready to pull the chair forward. He waved me off. I've got it. Tessa stared into her wine. I sat across from Dad. The MRI showed lesions in my brain. His expression emptied. The neurologist diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis. Dad looked at Tessa, as if she might correct my pronunciation. She's sure? He asked. Yes, what does that mean? I'm starting treatment. First steroids for the flare, then probably long-term medication. What kind of treatment? I don't know which long-term one yet. There are options. But what does it do? It can cause numbness, vision problems, weakness, fatigue, different things. Does it go away? No. He leaned back. The chair creaked. Dad had been beside Mom when a doctor told us her cancer had spread. He'd asked that doctor how long. He had not cried until he got home and found her reading glasses beside the sink. For the next 5 months, he organized every day around her, badly and completely. He burned her toast. He argued with nurses. He slept in a recliner beside her bed with the television on mute. He knew how to care for someone. That knowledge made what came next harder to forgive. "You've been working," he said. "Yes. You drove here." "Yes. So this isn't—" He stopped. "Isn't what?" "I'm trying to understand the severity." Tessa finally spoke. "The doctor said she shouldn't overdo it. What counts as overdoing it?" "I don't know," I said. "My leg stopped working in a parking lot. That felt like a clue." Dad frowned, but it came back. I stared at him. "What?" "It did. I need to listen to my body. Everybody needs to listen to their body, Mara. That doesn't tell us anything." Tessa set down her glass. "We need to talk about the surgery schedule." I turned to her slowly. She avoided my eyes and pulled her phone from the table. "It's 3 weeks away. If Mara can't drive during treatment, I can move some things. Evan can probably help with appointments." "Probably?" Dad said. "I'm working on it." "I already arranged my leave," I said. Tessa looked relieved. "Okay, great. I arranged it before I knew I had lesions in my brain." The relief disappeared. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. "Can we not say it like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're dying." "I'm not dying, that's my point." I laughed once. I couldn't help it. Tessa's mouth tightened. "Nobody is saying this isn't serious. You asked about his surgery before I got out of the parking lot. Because it's happening, Mara. We need facts. The facts are in my bag." "No, the medical information is in your bag. I need to know what you plan to do." There it was. Not what I needed. What I planned to do for them. "I don't know yet." Tessa leaned back and crossed her arms. "You've known since yesterday. I've had MS since yesterday. You've had symptoms for weeks. And I spent those weeks taking Dad to appointments. Dad looked wounded. Nobody asked you to ignore your health. You asked me to take you to joint class the morning after I fell. I didn't understand what was happening, neither did I. That's exactly why I don't think it's fair to use it against me now." Tessa pressed her fingers to her temple. "This is getting out of control." "No," I said. "For the first time, it's not under my control." She looked at me then. Really looked. Something wary entered her face. "The timing is just—" She stopped. Dad said, "Just what?" Tessa glanced at him, gathering permission without appearing to ask for it. Then she gave a small laugh. "Convenient." The word was so ugly I almost believed I had misheard it. "Convenient for who?" I asked. "For getting out of this. Getting out of Dad's surgery?" "I didn't say you made it up. You just said my diagnosis was convenient. It is, objectively. You agreed to stay here, and now, 3 weeks before surgery, there's suddenly a medical reason you can't. There is suddenly a name for what has been happening to me." Dad stared down at the table. I waited for him to tell her she'd gone too far. Instead, he said, "The timing does make you wonder. The chicken timer went off, none of us moved. Finally, Dad pointed toward the oven. It'll burn." I stood because that was what I had been trained to do when something in his house needed saving. At the counter, I gripped the oven handle with my numb hand and missed. Behind me, Tessa said, "Nobody's asking you to hurt yourself." I put on the oven mitt. "Then what are you asking?" Dad answered quietly. "We're asking whether you're still going to be there." I opened the oven. Heat washed over my face, blurring my eyes with sudden tears. "Yes," I said. And because neither of them had to ask what I meant, they both relaxed. I carried the chicken to the table and started carving it because Dad's knives were too dull for him to do it safely and too sentimental for him to replace. Tessa watched my right hand. "Do you want me to do that?" "No, I can. I know how." "I didn't say you didn't." Dad passed her the potatoes. She said she's fine. The word fine settled the matter for both of them. Tessa drank more wine. Dad asked whether steroids were the same thing athletes used, and I explained that I wasn't planning to win the Tour de France. He laughed. Tessa didn't. We ate around the diagnosis. Dad talked about a documentary he'd watched on bridges. Tessa complained that Evan loaded the dishwasher like a raccoon with a grudge. I chewed chicken that tasted like paper and waited for one of them to circle back to what had just happened. When Dad started clearing plates, Tessa touched my wrist. I didn't mean convenient like that. What other kind is there? I meant in terms of the situation. That helps. You know, I don't think you chose this. You implied I went looking for it. No, I didn't. You said I'd had symptoms for weeks, like I held them until I needed an excuse. She lowered her voice. I was surprised. That's all. Were you? Tessa looked toward the sink where Dad was scraping food into the trash with unnecessary force. I'm sorry you're sick, she said. It was not an apology for what she had done. It was sympathy for what had happened to me, which let her remain outside it. I'm not asking you to take over everything, I said, but I can't promise what my body will do. Nobody can. That's not the same thing, I know. She squeezed my wrist. We'll figure it out. We again. Dad drove me home because my vision had started shimmering at the edges. He complained about night traffic and braked too late at every red light, but he carried my bag to the door. You should get some sleep, he said. I'm going to. He stood on the porch, keys in hand. Your sister gets dramatic when she's worried. I noticed. She shouldn't have used that word. I waited. He looked past me toward my dark living room. But you can see why everybody's confused. I'm not confused. I mean, about what you can do. My neurologist explained it. To you, I offered you the papers. I'm not reading 20 pages of medical language. That's how people convince themselves they have everything. I've already been convinced by the lesions. His jaw shifted. There. That tone. What tone? The one that says anybody who asks a question is attacking you. I opened my door. Good night, Dad. He caught it before I could close it, not aggressively, just enough to keep the conversation alive. I'm scared for you, he said. The words changed his face. For 1 second, he looked older than 68. I softened before I wanted to. I'm scared, too. He nodded. His eyes got wet, but he turned toward the driveway before I could acknowledge it. Call me after the treatment, he said. I will. And don't worry about the surgery. We'll make it work. I watched him limp to his car. The following morning, Tessa sent a group text titled Team Frank. It included me, Evan, Dad, and a color-coded image of the recovery schedule. My name filled every weekday from 8 in the morning until 6 at night. Tessa had assigned herself Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 to 9. Evan had 2 physical therapy drives. A box labeled overnight said TBD. I called her. That was fast. I was up early. You gave me 50 hours. You already took leave. For 1 week, and I told you that before my diagnosis. Your doctor said activity is tolerated. My doctor doesn't know, Dad. We can shorten days if we need to. Who takes over? We'll adjust. With who? Mara, this is a draft. It doesn't say draft. I assumed we could have a normal conversation before finalizing it. You sent it to Dad. He needs to feel like there's a plan. He needs a plan, not a feeling. So edit it. I opened the image on my laptop. You locked the file. Did I? Yes. I'll send you the password. What is it? She hesitated. Team Frank, she said. Capital T, capital F? Obviously. I wanted to throw my phone. Instead, I asked what she planned to do during the other evenings. Work. Be with my husband. Basic maintenance of my life. I also have a life. You live alone. The silence afterward was immediate and deep. Tessa inhaled. That came out wrong. It came out accurate. No, it came out like living alone means your time doesn't matter. I don't believe that. You just scheduled 50 hours of it. I'm trying, Mara. She was. That was the infuriating part. Tessa's trying always had edges designed to preserve the center of her own life. Add a home health aide, I said. Dad won't like that. I don't like brain lesions. We don't even know what his insurance covers. We could find out. Fine. I'll call. She said it with the wounded generosity of someone agreeing to contact the moon. My steroid infusions began that afternoon. The infusion center had recliners arranged in curtained bays and a television mounted too high on the wall. A nurse named Carla wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm and warned me that the medication could leave a metallic taste. "Some people say sucking on hard candy helps," she said. I had brought one granola bar in Dad's surgical folder. Carla looked at it. "Homework?" "My father's getting a hip replaced." "When?" "Next Thursday. And you're handling that?" Apparently I'm Team Frank. She waited to see if I was joking. I gave her a lemon candy from the bowl beside my chair. Dad called 20 minutes into the infusion. "How's it going?" "Fine. Any side effects?" "My mouth tastes like I'm licking a mailbox." He laughed. "So? You're all right. The medication is still going in. Listen, the hospital called. They want me there at 5:30, not 6. I saw the message. You'll need to leave your place by 4:45. I'm not driving you." A pause. "Why not?" "Because Dr. Shah said I shouldn't drive if I'm having vision changes or weakness. Are you having them? Right this second?" "Yes." I'm sitting in a chair. "So we don't know." "That's not how permission works." He exhaled heavily. "Then who's taking me?" "Tessa. She hates driving downtown. Her vision works. I'll ask Evan." "Dad, Tessa is capable of taking you. I didn't say she wasn't. You just skipped over her. She has to work, so do I. You're on leave. For treatment. That's what I mean. You're available." Carla adjusted the IV line and pretended not to hear. "I'll arrange a car," I said. "I don't want a stranger driving me to surgery. It's a 15-minute ride. I'm supposed to trust some random person to show up at 5 in the morning? I trusted one after I fell. That's different. It was always different when the inconvenience moved toward him. Tessa eventually agreed to drive. She called me afterward to say Dad had made her feel guilty for having a presentation that afternoon. "He's scared," I said. "So am I. Everybody's scared. You don't see me making it everyone else's full-time job." I looked at the IV taped to my arm. "No," I said. "I see you making it mine." She went quiet. "I'm sorry," I said, because the habit was faster than thought. "No, you're not. No. Maybe we shouldn't talk right now." "Probably not." She hung up. The steroids made sleep impossible. I lay in bed that night with my heart thudding and my thoughts moving at triple speed. At 2 in the morning, I reorganized Dad's medication list. At 3, I ordered a raised toilet seat. At 4, I emailed my manager an explanation vague enough to preserve privacy and alarming enough to justify leave. My manager, Leah, called at 8. "Take the time," she said. "We'll cover you." "I can still answer email." "No, I have the quarterly reconciliation. Daniel can do it. He enters dates like a European. Then we'll all spend a week in April when we meant August." I laughed, and suddenly I was crying. Leah pretended not to notice until I could breathe again. "You don't earn medical leave by working through medical leave," she said. "Turn off your email." After the call, I stared at my laptop. At work, apparently, I was replaceable in the kindest possible way. At home, that felt like proof I mattered less. I completed 3 days of infusions. Tessa brought me electrolyte drinks after the second and sat beside me through the last one, answering work messages while I dozed. When I woke, she had draped her blazer over me. "You drooled on Italian wool," she said. "Add it to my schedule." She smiled, then looked guilty. "I called 3 home care agencies," she said. "And Dad says no." "What did they cost?" "That isn't the issue. It's at least an issue. He says he doesn't want strangers in the house. He says Mom wouldn't have wanted it. Mom had hospice nurses." I reminded him. "What did he say?" "That was different." Of course it was. We went to Dad's after the infusion to set up the downstairs room. He had cleared one drawer for me and placed fresh towels on the bed. "I'm not sleeping here every night," I said. He was attaching tennis balls to the back legs of his walker. "Nobody said every night. What are the towels for? People use towels. Why are my slippers beside the bed? You left them at Christmas, 3 years ago." He shrugged. "Good thing I saved them." Tessa stood in the doorway, sipping one of the electrolyte drinks she had bought for me. "We still have to resolve overnights," I told her. She checked her phone. "We will." "When?" Before surgery. That's 6 days, which is before surgery. Dad tested the walker, scowling as the tennis balls dragged across the rug. I won't need anybody after the first couple nights, he said. The hospital says you will. The hospital also says not to shave my legs. That instruction is about the surgical area. I wasn't planning to shave anything. I sat on the edge of the bed. Heat crawled up my neck from the steroids, and every muscle in my body felt hollow. Tessa disappeared upstairs to take a call. Dad kept pushing the walker, refusing to lift it properly. Slow down, I said. I am going slow. You're leaning too far forward. I've been walking longer than you. The right tennis ball caught on the rug. He stumbled. I stood too quickly. The room tilted sideways, and my hand shot toward the dresser. Dad regained his balance before I did. For a second, we faced each other across the walker, both of us pretending not to be frightened. Then he smiled. Look at us, he said. Pair of invalids. I couldn't smile back. He came closer and rested one hand on my shoulder. We'll take care of each other. It sounded loving. It was almost loving. But when Tessa's schedule arrived that night with the overnight boxes filled in, my name was in every one. I called Tessa. You put me on every overnight. They're placeholders. You typed my name into 7 placeholders. Dad is refusing outside help. That doesn't turn me into outside help. He's not going to need someone awake all night. You'll be sleeping at his house, between whatever he needs. You have the downstairs room. That isn't the point. What do you want me to do, Mara? Force him to accept an aid? Yes. You know what he's like. So do you. That's why you put my name there. She exhaled. I have to drive him to the hospital at 5 tomorrow morning, work from the waiting room, and give a presentation at 2. Can we please not turn this into a competition? I'm not competing with you. It feels like you're keeping score. I'm trying to find out when I get to sleep in my own bed. Fine. I'll take Friday night. Dad's surgery was Thursday. And tonight? He won't be home tonight. Tomorrow? I just said Friday. Friday begins at midnight. Are you taking Thursday night or arriving Friday after work? She went silent long enough to answer. I can come after work. Then I'm taking Thursday. You were already taking Thursday. I looked at her schedule on my laptop. My name sat in pale blue boxes from Thursday through Wednesday. Her name appeared in 2 dark green evening blocks, visually impressive and mathematically small. Thank you for clarifying, I said. Mara, don't. Don't what? Make everything I do sound useless. I didn't say anything about what you do. You never have to. She hung up first. I slept for 2 hours, woke drenched in sweat, and spent the rest of the night watching the numbers on my clock change. At 4:47, Tessa sent a photograph to Team Frank. Dad stood in his driveway wearing sweatpants, a button-down shirt, and the expression of a man being taken into custody. Tessa had captioned it, "Ready for his new bionic hip." Dad replied, "It's titanium, not bionic." I looked at the picture longer than I meant to. He had shaved that morning. His hair was combed. One hand gripped the top of his cane hard enough that his knuckles were pale. He looked scared. Me. Good luck. I'll be there soon. Dad. You don't need to come yet. Then, 30 seconds later, Dad. Around 7 is fine. Evan picked me up at 6:30. He brought coffee in a bag containing a muffin, 2 bananas, and enough protein bars for a mountain expedition. Tessa packed this, he said. For me. She said, you forget to eat when you're stressed. My throat tightened. She says nice things about you when you're not there, Evan added. That's a poor distribution model. He smiled. She doesn't know what to do with this. Neither do I. No, but you know you don't know. It was the most critical thing I'd ever heard him say about his wife. He kept his eyes on the road afterward as if he'd opened a door by accident. At the hospital, Dad was in a curtained pre-op bay wearing a gown and hospital socks. Tessa sat beside him with her laptop balanced on her knees. She'd made a folder for his discharge papers, labeled sections for medication and physical therapy, and brought a phone charger long enough to reach any outlet in the building. This was Tessa at her best. When she committed to a moment, she could make competence look festive. "There she is," Dad said when I walked in. His relief was unmistakable. I bent to hug him. He smelled like antiseptic soap and his usual aftershave, an odd combination that made my chest ache. "How are you feeling?" "Hungry. He's asked 6 people whether surgery counts as exercise and therefore qualifies him for a bigger breakfast," Tessa said. "Nobody will give me a straight answer." A nurse came in to confirm his name, birth date, allergies, and which hip was being replaced. Dad answered correctly until she asked whether he had a medical power of attorney. "My daughter," he said. "Which daughter?" Tessa asked. Dad blinked. "Both. You can't just say both if the form has one line. It's not going to matter. That isn't why they ask." He looked between us. "Mara knows my medical information." Tessa's face did not change, but she clicked her pen twice. "I have copies of everything," I said, "but Tessa's here and can handle decisions too." Dad nodded as if I had approved her. The nurse asked him to remove his watch. He handed it to me without thinking. Tessa clicked the pen again. I slipped the watch into my purse. "You want it?" "No." Her voice was too bright. "You're the keeper of things." A patient transporter arrived before we could argue. Dad tried to joke about getting a discount if the surgeon finished early, but his voice cracked. I took his hand. He held on. "I'll be here when you wake up," I said. "You better be." The words were soft, frightened, and still somehow an order. After they wheeled him away, Tessa went to the waiting area and opened her presentation. I sat beside her, watching the surgical status board change colors. "Dad trusts you more," she said without looking up. "With medical stuff, with everything important." "That's not true. He gave you the watch. He handed it to the person on his right. He named you for the form." "He didn't fill out the form. He would." "Tess," she shut her laptop halfway. "Do you know why I made the schedule? Because Dad needs help. Because if I didn't make it, you would do everything and then hate me for not stopping you." I stared at her. She looked back, her eyes tired and defensive. "Tell me I'm wrong. You made a schedule where I do everything, because every time I suggested an aid, Dad called you and afterward you told me we could manage. Once. 3 times. I remembered the calls. Dad saying strangers stole. Dad saying he wouldn't sleep with someone he didn't know in the house. Dad asking whether Mom would have hired a person to wash him. I had told him we would work something out. "I didn't ask you to assign me nights," I said. "No, you just made it impossible to solve the problem any other way. That is deeply unfair." "I know." She reopened her laptop. "It can also be true." Before I could answer, the surgeon appeared. The procedure had gone well. Dad was in recovery. No complications. Good bone quality. If he met the physical therapy goals, he could go home the following afternoon. Tessa cried again, fast and silently. I put my arm around her. For that hour, we were sisters. Not categories of labor, not the reliable one and the bright one. Just 2 women whose father was alive behind a set of locked doors. Then her calendar reminder chimed. My presentation, go. I can cancel. No, you can't. Yes, I can. You've been preparing for weeks. She looked toward the recovery doors. What if he wakes up? I'm here. The relief crossed her face before she could hide it. I'll come right back, she said. She did come back, but not until after 7. Dad had been awake for hours. He was groggy, thirsty, and offended by the clear liquid dinner. He told me the nurses had forgotten him every time they left the room, then became charming the instant one returned. There's my favorite person, he told a nurse who had introduced herself 6 minutes earlier. Interesting, I said. She brings drugs. So did Mom at the end, and you still complained about her meatloaf. Dad smiled, then winced. His hand searched across the blanket until it found mine. Tessa entered carrying 3 coffees and a small silver balloon that said, "Get well soon." Dad looked past her. Did you bring real food? Hello to you, too. They gave me broth. You had major surgery. On my hip, not my stomach. She set the coffees down and kissed his forehead. He complained that her hair touched his face, but he closed his eyes for a moment under the kiss. The next afternoon, physical therapy cleared him to leave. Dad demonstrated 3 steps with the walker, while Tessa filmed the instructions on her phone, and I took notes. He resented both methods equally. The discharge nurse reviewed signs of infection, medication timing, blood clot prevention, exercises, and fall precautions. "Who'll be staying with you tonight?" she asked. Both Dad and Tessa looked at me. "My daughter," Dad said. The nurse smiled. "Good. Make sure you let her help. I've been letting her help for years." He meant it as a joke. Tessa laughed. I looked down at the medication list until the words stopped shaking. At home, Dad rejected the walker before reaching the front door. "I can use the cane." "No," Tessa and I said together. He looked pleased to have united us. Getting him inside took 12 minutes. Getting him into the recliner took another 10 because he insisted the cushion was wrong. Tessa arranged his medications on the coffee table while I heated soup. She'd bought a small brass service bell. I found it beside his water glass. "No," I said. "It's a joke. Take it home." Dad picked it up and rang once. The sound was delicate and cheerful. "If you ring that again, I'll replace your pain pills with light sour cream." He laughed hard enough to regret it. Tessa dropped the bell into her purse. By 8, she had changed the flowers in the kitchen, taken out the trash, posted an update to Team Frank, and checked her watch 9 times. "You can go," I said. "I don't have to. You want to. That isn't the same." Dad was dozing. The television flickered across his face. Tessa lowered her voice. "Call me if you need anything. What would you do? Come back. Would you?" She flinched. I immediately hated myself. "Yes," she said, "I would." After she left, I lined up Dad's nighttime pills, helped him stand, walked behind him to the bathroom, and tried not to show how much my right leg trembled. At 11:30, I settled into the downstairs bed in my clothes. At 11:42, my phone rang. "Dad, can you bring me water? There's a full glass beside you. It's warm." I stared at the ceiling. "Mara, I'm coming." In the living room, the glass was still cool. Condensation ran down its side. Dad took 1 sip and handed it back. "Too cold," he said. My phone buzzed with a message from Tessa. "How's our patient?" I looked at Dad, already closing his eyes again. "Fine," I typed. Dad woke me 6 more times. At 12:20, he needed the bathroom. At 1:10, he couldn't find the television remote, which was under his left hand. At 2, he wanted to know when he could take another pain pill. At 3:15, he said the pain pill was making him itch. At 4, he asked if itching counted as an allergic reaction. At 5:30, he called because the room was too quiet. "What am I supposed to do about that?" I asked. "Turn on the television. The remote is under your left hand. It isn't. It was last time. That was hours ago." I found it under his right thigh. By 6, he was asleep, and I was standing in the kitchen trying to read the medication chart through a patch of blurred vision. The columns moved when I looked directly at them. If I tilted my head, the numbers held still. I took a photograph of the page and enlarged it on my phone. Dad called from the living room. "You making coffee?" "I'm trying." "Make mine weak." "You complain when it's weak." "I'm trying to cut down." I poured water into the machine and missed the reservoir. It ran across the counter and onto the floor. I stared at it. "Mara." "What?" "Nothing. Just checking." He had used my name so often during the night that it no longer sounded like mine. I cleaned the counter, started the coffee, and swallowed the nausea rising in my throat. Dr. Shah's office had warned me that the effects of the steroids could linger. They had also warned me to rest. I wondered if medical advice counted when nobody in your family found it practical. Dad woke in a good mood. Surgery had reduced the deep grinding pain in his hip, and the new pain felt temporary enough to make him optimistic. He ate scrambled eggs, criticized their texture, and told me I looked tired. "You should have slept when I slept." I tried. "I didn't stop you." At 10, a physical therapist named Luis arrived. He had calm eyes and the sturdy patience of a man who spent his days explaining to stubborn people that gravity applied to them personally. Dad adored him. "I've always been active," Dad said while Luis adjusted the walker. "You told the surgeon you stopped walking to the mailbox," I said. "That was because of the incline. The driveway is flat. It has a grade." Luis looked between us. "Let's start with standing." Dad followed every instruction he had argued with me about. He used the walker correctly. He kept his feet inside the frame. He did not twist. When Luis told him to sit before he felt tired, Dad nodded as if receiving classified information. Afterward, Dad said, "That guy knows what he's doing. I told you the same things. You were guessing. I was reading the hospital instructions. That isn't experience." I picked up the exercise sheet Luis had left. My numb fingers bent the corner. Dad noticed. "Hand acting up?" "A little." "You call your doctor?" "Not yet. You should." The concern was real, which somehow made me angrier. Tessa arrived at 6 carrying 2 coffees, a bakery box, and a grocery store bouquet arranged to look more expensive than it was. She kissed Dad, handed me a cup, and surveyed the living room. "You look amazing," she told him. "I look like I was hit by a truck. A handsome truck." Dad grinned. Tessa sat on the arm of the recliner and opened the bakery box. She had bought him his favorite cinnamon roll, despite the discharge instructions recommending lighter food while he was taking narcotic pain medication. "He barely ate lunch," I said. "Then he has room. He needs protein." I brought pecans. Dad took the cinnamon roll. "Your sister believes pleasure interferes with healing. I believe constipation interferes with healing." He paused with the pastry halfway to his mouth. Tessa pointed at me. "You ruin everything beautifully." For 20 minutes, the house felt almost normal. Dad told us a nurse had tried to steal his socks. I explained that she had been removing them for surgery. Tessa imitated his hospital voice, the one he used to make unreasonable requests sound like favors he was doing for civilization. Then she held out her phone. "Picture." "No," I said. "One." "Why?" "Because Dad survived surgery. I survived yesterday." Dad straightened in the recliner and smoothed his hair. "Come on, your sister wants a picture." Tessa stood behind him. I stayed near the coffee table. "Get closer," she said. "I'm close enough." "Mara." I moved beside the recliner. Dad put one arm around Tessa and reached for me with the other. His hand landed on my waist. Tessa took 3 photographs, chose the one where Dad looked healthiest, and posted it to the group. "Frank home and doing great. Team effort." Responses appeared immediately from adults who had not been asked to join the team. Dad's cousin sent praying hands. A former co-worker wrote that Frank was lucky to have such devoted daughters. Tessa showed him. He smiled. "That's nice." I looked at the photograph. Tessa was polished, Dad was cheerful, and I was holding his medication chart just outside the frame. At 7, I handed Tessa the schedule. "His next pill is at 8. He needs to walk before bed. Don't let him get up without the walker." She glanced down. "Where are you going?" "Home." Her eyes widened. "Tonight? You said you'd take Friday. I said I'd come Friday after work. You said you'd take Friday night." Dad looked from her to me. "I don't need a referee." "You called me because the room was quiet," I said. "That was last night. I'm stronger now." Tessa lowered her voice. "I have to be home by 10. "Why?" "Because I told Evan I would." "Tell him you won't. You don't know what I've already canceled this week. I know what I've canceled. There, scorekeeping, you volunteered for tonight. I volunteered before I knew you were going to leave the second I arrived. I've been here since yesterday. Nobody asked you to stay awake all night." Dad shifted in his chair. "Could we stop discussing me like a difficult dog?" Tessa walked into the kitchen. I followed. "I need one night in my own bed," I whispered. "And I need to see my husband. You saw him this morning. That isn't the point." "Then explain the point." "The point is, you don't get to decide, my marriage requires less attention because you're tired. I'm not deciding anything about your marriage. Dad needs somebody here. And you live alone." I felt the same cut in the same place. She closed her eyes. I did not mean it that way. How many times are you going to say something that way? She leaned against the counter. Her face softened. I know you're going through something awful, she said, but you can't use it to make everybody prove how much they love you. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. She mistook my silence for calm. I'll stay until 10, she continued. Then you can sleep. Dad will probably sleep too. What happens after 10? You're already staying here. I looked toward the living room. Dad had muted the television. He was listening. The compression wrap around his leg needed to be changed before bed. The nurse had demonstrated it while Tessa filmed. When I reminded her, she pulled up the video and watched 10 seconds. I can't do that, she said. Why? It's swollen. He had surgery. I know, but there's bruising. Also, surgery. What if I wrap it too tight? I thought you wanted facts. Don't be mean. I laughed in disbelief. Tessa, you called my diagnosis convenient, and you apparently plan to punish me forever. No. I'm asking you to wrap Dad's leg. Dad called from the living room. Mara does it better. Neither of us had ever done it. Tessa left at 9:30. She hugged me for a long time at the door and whispered, I'm sorry. I did not know which things she meant. Saturday passed in pills, exercises, bathroom trips, and arguments about water. Dad refused to drink enough, then complained of dizziness. He insisted he could make his own sandwich and nearly twisted on the wrong leg reaching for mustard. Tessa came for 2 hours with clean laundry. Evan came separately and sat with Dad while I showered. I stayed under the water until it cooled, then sat on the closed toilet because my legs were shaking. When I returned, Evan had washed the coffee cups and written down Dad's pill time without being asked. Go home for a few hours, he said. I can't drive, I'll take you. What about Dad? I'll stay. I looked at him. Why? His eyebrows lifted. Because you need help. The simplicity of it made me suspicious. Dad refused. I don't want to be passed around, he said. You're not being passed around. You leave, then your sister leaves, then I'm sitting here with Evan. Evan stood beside the kitchen counter, close enough to hear. Evan is family, I said. That isn't what I meant. It sounded like it. Dad glanced toward him. No offense. None taken, Evan said, which meant some had been. I stayed. By Sunday afternoon, the numbness had spread from my fingers into my palm. I dropped a spoon, then a bottle of water. Dad watched both happen. You should rest, he said. I need to make dinner. We can order. You said takeout upsets your stomach. Make something easy. Tessa arrived while soup simmered on the stove. She brought another coffee and stood close to Dad's recliner for a second photograph. No pictures, I said. Dad smiled toward the phone anyway. Your sister documents things. She documents her part. Tessa lowered the phone. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. No, say it. The soup boiled over. I turned too fast. My right leg dragged, catching the edge of the rug. I grabbed the counter and stayed upright. Tessa rushed toward me. Are you okay? I'm fine. You're limping. I know. Sit down. I have to move the pot. I can move a pot. She did, but with the expression of someone stepping into an emergency I had created. I ladled soup into 3 bowls while she carried 2 to the table. Dad sat with his walker beside him. Tessa took the chair across from him. I picked up the 3rd bowl. My numb fingers opened. The bowl hit the floor. Ceramic cracked. Soup spread across the tile and splashed my jeans. Nobody moved. Dad looked at the broken bowl, then at Tessa, then at me. His face tightened with embarrassment. Are you doing this because your sister's here? He asked. I stared at him. What? Being dramatic. You were managing fine before she came. Tessa said, Dad, but quietly. I looked down at my shaking hand. Then I stepped over the broken pieces and reached for my purse. Tessa got to the purse first. You can't drive. I know. Then where are you going? Home. How? I'll call a car. Dad gripped the arms of his chair. Don't storm out. I'm not storming. You're upset. I dropped a bowl because I can't feel my hand, and you accuse me of performing for an audience. I asked a question. No. You offered an explanation. Tessa held my purse against her chest. "Can everybody stop for 1 second?" I reached for it. She didn't let go. "Tess, sit down. You're shaking. Give me my purse. Let me clean this up first. I'm not asking you to clean it. There's broken glass. Ceramic. That is not the important distinction." Dad said my name in his warning tone. "You don't leave people in the middle of an argument." I turned toward him. "You mean I don't leave you?" His face changed. Tessa released my purse. I stepped into the hallway and ordered a car. The driver was 11 minutes away. 11 minutes felt like an entire legal proceeding. Behind me, Tessa swept the broken bowl into a dustpan. Dad sat at the table with his untouched soup. I could hear the walker scrape as he shifted it closer. "You're staying tonight," he said. It wasn't quite a question. "No. You said you would." "I shouldn't have." His voice rose. "What am I supposed to do?" "Tessa's here." Tessa stopped sweeping. Dad looked at her. "She has to work tomorrow. So do I. You're on leave." "For my health." "I know that. Why do you keep saying it like we've forgotten?" I looked at the soup splashed across my jeans. "Because you keep forgetting." Tessa leaned the broom against the wall. "I can stay." She said it with visible effort. Dad heard the effort too. "I don't need anybody doing me a favor." "All care is a favor," I said. "You just stopped noticing mine." My ride arrived. I opened the front door. Dad's voice followed me. "If you leave every time somebody says the wrong thing, you're going to end up alone." The words struck exactly where he meant them to. I closed the door without answering. The driver had placed a vanilla air freshener in every available vent. The smell folded around my nausea. I sat with both windows cracked, staring at Dad's house as we pulled away. Tessa called before we reached the end of his street. I declined it. She called again. Then she sent a message. "I'm staying. You don't have to worry about him." 30 seconds later. "Please tell me when you're home." I typed. "Thank you." I deleted it. "Me. I'll let you know." At home, I left my shoes in the entryway and lowered myself onto the couch. The house was silent. No television. No pill alarms. No one saying my name from another room. Relief hurt worse than guilt. I closed my eyes and slept for 12 hours. When I woke, sunlight filled the living room. My phone was on the floor. I reached for it and missed. My hand had become a pale object attached to my wrist. I could move it, but touching the screen felt like tapping through several layers of fabric. When I finally picked up the phone, the numbers blurred into each other. There were 18 messages, 4 from Tessa, 6 from Dad, 3 from Team Frank, including a photograph of his breakfast, 2 from Evan, 1 from Leah asking if I needed anything, 2 missed calls from Dr. Shaw's nurse. The nurse's voicemail asked me to call immediately. Tessa must have contacted the office because the second message mentioned increased weakness and vision changes. I called with the phone held close to my face. Nurse Carla, not infusion center Carla, another Carla, apparently medicine had assigned the name by department, asked whether I could walk. Yes. Safely? I'm sitting down. That's not what I asked. Everybody in neurology was difficult. I can walk if I'm careful. Any new facial weakness? Trouble speaking? Severe headache? No. Can you see clearly? Not to read. She put me on hold. Dr. Shaw came on less than a minute later. What happened? My hand got worse. I mean, before that, your sister said you've been caring for your father around the clock. It wasn't around the clock. How many nights? 3. How much sleep? I don't know. Mara, not enough. And you've been lifting, cooking, assisting him to stand? Mostly he stands himself. That wasn't my question. I pressed my numb hand between my knees, trying to feel the pressure. I thought the steroids were supposed to fix this. They reduce inflammation. They are not permission to ignore your body. I didn't ignore it. You dropped a hot bowl. It wasn't that hot. She was silent long enough for me to hear myself. I want to see you tomorrow morning, she said. Do not drive. Bring someone who has observed the symptoms if possible. I can come alone. You can arrive alone. That is not the same as having support. I don't need them to believe me. No, you don't. But if your family is involved in your care, they need accurate information about what support is safe to expect from you. My family is involved in my father's care. And whose care are you involved in? I didn't answer. Dr. Shaw's voice softened. Bring someone, Mara. After we hung up, I called Leah. She approved another week of leave without making me earn it through details. Then I sat in the quiet and waited for the shapes in the room to become single again. The front door opened at 11. I had forgotten Tessa still had a key. She came in carrying 2 grocery bags and froze when she saw me. You look terrible. Good morning. Why didn't you answer? I was asleep. For 12 hours? You said I should rest. I didn't mean unconscious. She put the bags on the counter and came closer. Can you see me? There's only one of you right now. That's not funny. It's a little funny. She sat beside me and reached for my hand. Her fingers were cool. She rubbed the center of my palm with her thumb. Can you feel that? Yes. How much? I don't have a percentage scale. Your doctor called me, I gathered. I told the nurse what happened. Thank you. The words came out without warmth. Tessa pulled her hand away. I was trying to help. I said thank you. You said it like I reported you. You did report me. Because you left. I left Dad. I didn't disappear. You wouldn't answer. I texted when I got home. 2 words. Was I supposed to provide a weather report? Her face crumpled briefly, then hardened to cover it. I stayed all night, she said. I know. He called me 11 times from the next room. I know. He wanted fresh water at 2 a.m. I know. He told me the ice packs were too heavy. I know. Stop saying you know. I do know. She stood and walked to the window. How did you do that for 3 nights? I thought you were here to accuse me of leaving. I'm not accusing you. What are you doing? I don't know. That was the first honest answer either of us had given in days. She turned back. Dad's furious, of course. He's also worried. Of course. He said he didn't mean dramatic like fake. What kind did he mean? He meant... She searched the room. Heightened, like fake, but with a college degree. I told him it was awful. Thank you. Stop thanking me like that. She picked up the grocery bags and began unloading them. Soup, crackers, electrolyte drinks, frozen meals, bread. She had bought full, fat sour cream. Evan's with Dad, she said. He arranged to work from there. Dad must love that. He told Evan he types too loudly. Evan types like he's apologizing to the keys. Tessa smiled despite herself. He does. She placed the sour cream in my refrigerator. Why did you buy that? You like baked potatoes. I bought it for Dad. Well, he can buy his own. I looked at her. She looked away first. Dr. Shaw wants to see me tomorrow, I said. She asked me to bring someone. I'll go. You have work. I'll go. She wants someone who's seen the symptoms. I saw the bowl. So did Dad. Her hand stopped on the freezer door. He wants to come, she said. He knows about the appointment. The nurse called him first. You listed him as your emergency contact. I had filled out that form before my diagnosis when Dad still seemed like the obvious person. He can barely get around. He can get to a car. He says he needs to hear directly from the doctor. I laughed, then regretted it when the room tilted. Tessa caught my elbow. Why is that funny? Because I already heard directly from the doctor. He says you explain things in the most alarming possible way. I showed you her papers. He wants to ask questions. About me or about his schedule. Tessa's grip loosened. He needs to understand what's happening. He needs to know when I can come back. He didn't say that. He didn't have to. Tessa sat again. Maybe if he hears it from Dr. Shaw, he'll stop. Stop what? Acting like you can push through this. The possibility was so tempting that I distrusted it immediately. And you? I asked. What about me? Will you stop? Her eyes moved to my hand. I came, she said. That isn't an answer. It's what I have. Dad called that afternoon. I'm sorry you took it the wrong way, he said. I took it as you said it. I was in pain. So was I. I know. Apparently everybody knew except me. I almost reminded him that he had watched me drop things for 2 days. Instead, I asked, "Why are you coming tomorrow? I want to understand your condition. For my sake? What kind of question is that? One my doctor may ask." He went quiet. Then he said, "We need to know what's realistic." There it was again. We. "My appointment is at 9. Tessa's picking me up at 8. I'll meet you there. No, she'll pick you up first. You shouldn't be alone." The instruction was tender enough to confuse me. At 8:30 the next morning, I opened my front door and found Tessa holding my purse from the night I'd left Dad's house. Behind her, Dad sat in the passenger seat with his walker folded in the back. He did not mention that I had left it. I did not thank her for bringing it. At Dr. Shaw's office, Tessa pushed Dad in a wheelchair because the walk from the elevator was too far. He complained the entire way, then smiled politely at the receptionist. The three of us barely fit inside the examination room. Dad positioned his chair near the wall. Tessa sat beside the desk. I took the edge of the examination table, the paper crinkling under me every time I moved. Dr. Shaw entered, looked at the three of us, and closed the door. Dad stared at the anatomical poster behind her shoulder. Tessa leaned forward. "We need some clarity," she said. Dr. Shaw set her tablet on the counter. "Clarity about what?" Tessa glanced at Dad. He kept his eyes on the poster. "About what Mara can safely do," she said. "She's been given a lot of general warnings, and everybody is interpreting them differently." "I'm not," I said. Dr. Shaw looked at me. "How have your symptoms changed?" The numbness moved into my palm. My vision got worse yesterday. My leg drags when I'm tired. Any falls since the parking lot? No. Near falls? I thought of Dad's rug catching his walker while the room tilted around me. One. Tessa said. She also dropped a bowl. Dr. Shaw turned back to me. "Was it hot?" "Not very. It shattered," Tessa added. "I understand what bowls do." Dad shifted in the wheelchair. Nobody was injured. Dr. Shaw watched him for a moment, then pulled the rolling stool in front of me. She tested my eye movements, grip, reflexes, and sensation. When she touched a small plastic point to my right palm, I could see it making contact but barely felt it. "Sharp or dull?" she asked. "Dull." She moved to the other hand. "Sharp." Dad leaned forward, watching. Dr. Shaw had me stand. I managed 3 heel-to-toe steps before my right foot slipped sideways. "That's enough. I can do it again." "I didn't ask whether you could force yourself through it." I sat back on the table. Tessa crossed one leg over the other. "Is this permanent? It's too early to know how fully the current symptoms will resolve. Mara's still experiencing an active flare, but she already had steroids." "Yes." "So shouldn't that have stopped it?" "Steroids can shorten a relapse. They do not instantly reverse every symptom, and they do not protect against the effects of exhaustion." Dad cleared his throat. "What kind of activity is safe? For Mara?" "Yes." Dr. Shaw looked at me. "What activity have you been doing?" I picked at the paper beneath my thigh. "Helping Dad after surgery. What does helping mean? Meals, medication, walking with him, ice packs, his compression wrap, and sleep? Some." "She stayed 3 nights, Tessa said, but nobody expected her to stay awake." Dr. Shaw's eyes went to Tessa. "Did somebody else respond when he needed help?" Tessa's mouth tightened. "No. Then it sounds like she was expected to wake up." Dad finally stopped looking at the poster. "I had just come home from surgery." "I understand. I couldn't be left alone." "I understand that, too." He gestured toward me. "That's why she was there." Dr. Shaw nodded once. "And now she's here." The room went still. Dad rubbed his thumb along the arm of the wheelchair. "I'm not sure what that means. It means your care needs and Mara's medical needs currently conflict. Her disease does not become less active because your surgery was scheduled first." Tessa leaned forward. Nobody is asking her to ignore her disease. I looked at her. She saw me and added, "Not intentionally." Dr. Shah opened the test results on her tablet. Mara's MRI showed multiple lesions, including one with active inflammation. Her history suggests earlier episodes as well. Her symptoms started before her father's operation. "I know," Tessa said. "Do you?" The question wasn't hostile. That made it worse. Tessa's shoulders stiffened. "I'm the one who took her to the emergency room, and I'm glad you did. I'm also the one who called your office when she wouldn't. I'm glad you did that too." Tessa looked briefly disarmed. Dr. Shah continued, "What are you hoping I'll tell you today? That she'll be okay. That's understandable. And what she can still do. Practically." Dr. Shah waited. Tessa spread her hands. "Our father just had a hip replacement. There's a schedule. Work has been moved. Everybody is trying to adjust, but we need something more specific than listen to your body. What tasks has Mara stopped doing? She left Dad's house. That is a location, not a task." Tessa looked at Dad again. He said nothing. "She was staying overnight," Tessa said, "driving him to appointments before surgery, managing medication, cooking, making sure he does his exercises." Dr. Shah nodded. "Those sound like Frank's care requirements." "They are," Tessa said. "They are not a description of Mara's health. Nobody said they were. You asked me what she can still do, then listed services she provides to someone else." Tessa sat back. Dad's face had gone red. "Doctor, with all respect, you don't know our family." "No, I know my patient, and she has a habit of doing more than she needs to." I looked at him, surprised. It was almost a defense. Then he continued, "She takes over, and afterward she acts like nobody appreciates it. Sometimes it's hard to know whether she truly can't do something or whether she's reached the point where she resents being asked." There it was. Dr. Shah turned to me. "Did you resent helping your father?" My throat tightened. "Sometimes." Dad looked vindicated. "Did that cause your lesions?" Dr. Shah asked. "No." "Did resentment cause your leg weakness?" "No." "Did it cause your double vision?" "No." Tessa shook her head. "This is not what we're saying. What are you saying?" "I'm saying the diagnosis came at a complicated time." Dr. Shah waited. Tessa gave the small, disbelieving laugh I had heard at Dad's table. "It was just a very convenient diagnosis. That's all I'm saying." My father stared at the colored sections of the brain poster. Dr. Shah set down her pen. "Convenient for whom?" Tessa's lips parted. "For nobody," she said. "You use the word. I mean the timing. Obviously, MS isn't convenient." "Then what did the diagnosis allow Mara to avoid?" Tessa's voice sharpened. "I didn't say avoid. You said convenient." Dad interrupted. "She's choosing the wrong word." "No," I said. "It's the word she chose at dinner, too." Dr. Shah looked at me. "What happened at dinner?" I could feel both of them waiting for me to make the story fair. I told them I had MS. Tessa said it was convenient because Dad's surgery was 3 weeks away. Dad agreed the timing made him wonder. "Mara," Dad said quietly, "you did." I was trying to understand. "What did you wonder?" He looked down at his hands. Tessa answered for him. Whether she was using it to get out of the care plan. Dr. Shah's face stayed calm. "Is that still what you believe?" "No," Tessa said quickly. Dad remained silent. "Frank?" He shifted in the wheelchair. "I believe she has MS." That wasn't the question. His jaw flexed. "I don't know what she's capable of." Dr. Shah nodded. "Neither does Mara. That uncertainty is part of a new diagnosis. It does not entitle anyone to test her limits on their behalf." Dad's face tightened. "She was working and functioning before this," he said. "Then suddenly everything became dangerous. Everything did not become dangerous. The symptoms became severe enough that she could no longer hide them. Hide them from who?" Dr. Shah looked at me. I wanted her to answer. I wanted to stay silent and let the scan speak in white glowing spots. Instead, I said, "From you." Dad's eyes snapped to mine. "You had the pre-op appointments. You were scared. Every time I thought about calling a doctor, there was something you needed. I never told you not to go. No, you just made everything else urgent." Tessa shook her head. "You told me you thought it was tight shoes, because I needed it to be tight shoes. Why? Because if it was something worse, who was going to take care of Dad?" No one spoke. Dr. Shaw asked, "How much support have you received since the diagnosis?" Tessa took me to the ER. Evan drove me to the first appointment. Tessa came to one infusion. "And at home?" "I live alone." "That isn't what I asked." Tessa looked at the floor. Dr. Shaw turned to Dad. "Are you here as Mara's support person, or are you here to challenge the diagnosis until her restrictions fit your recovery plan?" Dad gripped the wheelchair arm. "That's unfair. It is a question. I came because I'm worried about my daughter. What support are you offering her?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I watched his face and felt something inside me tear with almost no sound, not because he was cruel, because he was searching honestly and still could not find an answer. Dr. Shaw gave us updated instructions. I needed rest, no driving during visual disturbance or weakness, and another course of treatment if the symptoms progressed. The nurse coordinator would continue working on approval for the long-term medication. If I lost significant strength, developed new severe symptoms, or could not walk safely, I was to call immediately. She did not forbid me from seeing Dad. She did not order Tessa to take over. She simply took away the lie that a doctor had approved what they wanted. In the hallway, Dad refused Tessa's help with the wheelchair. His foot caught on the floor when he tried to propel himself, and the chair swung toward the wall. "Let me," Tessa said. "I've got it." "You don't." I said I've got it. A receptionist looked up. Dad finally allowed Tessa to push him. Outside, the morning sun hurt my eyes. I put on sunglasses and sat on a low concrete wall while Tessa helped Dad into the passenger seat. When she returned for the wheelchair, she stopped in front of me. "You let her think we forced you." "You did. We did not force you to stay. You made leaving mean I didn't love him." Dad opened the car door again. "That doctor humiliated us. She asked you what support you were offering. She had no right to talk to me like I'm using my own daughter." I stood slowly. "Were you able to answer her?" His face changed. "You made your point." "No, I kept missing it." Tessa folded the wheelchair with a hard metallic snap. "So what happens now?" she asked. "You hire the aide." Dad shook his head. "Absolutely not." "Then Tessa handles what she can." Tessa stared at me. "By myself? You're not by yourself. Evan has helped. There are agencies. Dad can choose. And you? I'm not staying overnight. I'm not managing his pills. I'm not cooking, driving, or arranging appointments." Dad looked stunned. "You're walking away while I'm recovering? I'm stopping before your recovery costs me more of mine." I opened my purse. Dad's house key was attached to my ring, worn smooth from years of use. I worked it loose with my left hand and held it out. He didn't take it. Tessa did. "What about tonight?" she asked. "You filmed the discharge instructions." "Mara, you said you needed clarity." I stepped back from them. "This is it." Tessa put the wheelchair in the trunk. "Get in," she said. "I'll take you home." I called a car. "Cancel it." "No." Dad sat in the passenger seat with the door open, watching us in the side mirror. Tessa lowered her voice. "You don't have to make a scene. We are standing in a medical office parking lot. Nobody cares. I care. Then take Dad home. You're my sister, and he's your father." The sentence came out colder than I intended. She flinched. "He's yours too. I know." My car pulled into the loading zone. Before I could walk away, Tessa caught my elbow. "If you do this, he's going to think you're punishing him. I can't control what he thinks. You've been trying to control what everybody thinks since we got here. By letting my doctor talk? By telling her the worst version of everything." I looked at her hand on my arm. She released me. I dropped a bowl, I said. He called me dramatic. That is the version. He was in pain. He's always in pain when he hurts me. Dad called from the car. I can hear you. Then close the door, Tessa snapped. He slammed it hard enough to rock the car. I got into my ride. Tessa stood beside the folded wheelchair in the empty space, her face caught between anger and panic. As we pulled away, she was still holding Dad's house key. At home, I placed my own keys in the small ceramic dish by the door. The ring looked wrong without his. For years, that key had meant access, trust, family. It had also meant that any locked door in Dad's life was my responsibility to open. I sat on the floor beside the dish and cried until my numb hand went completely cold. Team Frank began vibrating before noon. Tessa, does anyone know when the next pain pill is? Evan, 12:30 according to yesterday's sheet. Dad, I already took it. Tessa, when? Dad, recently. Tessa, what does recently mean? Dad, before we left. Tessa, you were not supposed to take one before the appointment. Dad, I was in pain. Tessa, did you write it down? Dad, I'm telling you now. Evan, don't give him another until we confirm the time. Dad, I am in this chat. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I knew the pill bottle was in a white basket beside the recliner. I knew the medication log had slid beneath the discharge folder because Dad kept moving his coffee onto the table. I knew how to solve it. I muted the conversation. Then I sent one message. For clarity, I'm off the care schedule. The discharge folder has the medication instructions and the hospital number. Please use both. I'll check on Dad as his daughter when I'm medically able. Tessa called immediately. I turned the phone face down. Dad called next. I watched his name disappear. At 1, Tessa texted me privately. This is unbelievably cruel. At 1:15, I found the sheet. At 1:20, he took it at 9:30. It's fine. At 1:30, you could have answered. I put the phone in a kitchen drawer. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It had teeth. I wandered through my own house, noticing all the things nobody needed from me. A cup sat in the sink because I had left it there. A stack of unopened mail waited on the counter without interpreting my delay as rejection. The blanket on the couch was twisted from where I had slept, and no one asked me to straighten it. I heated one of the frozen meals Tessa had bought. Halfway through eating, I realized I could taste it. At Dad's, everything had tasted like paper. I slept again. When I woke near sunset, the double vision had eased. My hand was still numb, but the cold had retreated to my fingertips. Rest had done in 6 hours what determination had failed to do in 6 days. That should have felt validating. Instead, I thought about Dad needing help to stand from the toilet and nearly called him. My phone rang before I could. Evan. I answered because Evan rarely asked for anything. I'm not calling to pressure you, he said. Good opening. I wanted that entered into the record. What's wrong? Nothing urgent. Tessa can't find the extra compression wraps. Hall closet, top shelf, behind the blue towels. Thank you. Is Dad okay? He's angry. That isn't what I asked. He's medically okay. Luis came. Frank did the exercises and told him you had abandoned the rehabilitation program. Of course he did. Luis told him recovery wasn't a group project. I smiled. I like Luis. Tessa's staying tonight. She knows where the brass bell is, right? In her purse. Tell her to throw it into traffic. Evan went quiet. How are you? I asked. I'm fine. No, you're married to my sister. That answer has already been disqualified. He gave a tired laugh. She's scared that if she says this is too much, she'll prove you right. I don't want to be right. I know. Does she? Not currently. We hung up without discussing whether I would come back. That was the kindest thing anyone had done for me all week. At 2:13 in the morning, Dad called. I had put the phone beside my bed in case Dr. Shaw's office needed me. His name lit the room. I answered on the 4th ring. What happened? Nothing happened. Why are you calling? I need an ice pack. Wake Tessa. She's asleep. She's in the house. She has that presentation in the morning. So, You're awake. Because you called me. He sighed. I just wanted to hear your voice. The anger went out of me so quickly it left me weak. Dad, you left your sweater here. Put it in the downstairs room. I did. Then it's fine. Another pause. Are you coming tomorrow? No, Tessa has to work. I know, Evan can't stay all day. Then call the agency. I told you I don't want strangers. Then you're choosing the available amount of help. You don't talk like yourself anymore. What do I sound like? Your doctor. The accusation was almost funny. I'm going back to sleep. Mara. What? I didn't say your disease was fake. You wondered whether it was useful. No, I wondered whether you were using it. The distinction was so precise that he must have been polishing it all day. That's worse. How's that worse? Good night, Dad. Could you at least call your sister? She doesn't wake up when I call. She learned from me. I ended the call and turned off the lamp. 5 minutes later, Tessa texted. He woke you, didn't he? Me? Yes. Tessa. I was in the bathroom. Me? He said you were asleep. Tessa. He lies when he wants a specific answer. Me? I know. Tessa. Stop saying that. I almost did. Instead, I put the phone back down. The next morning, the nurse coordinator called about long-term treatment options. She walked me through insurance requirements and scheduled blood tests. Her questions were all about me, my work, my tolerance for injections, whether I traveled, whether I wanted a daily pill or preferred an infusion schedule that would be easier to remember but harder to arrange. I kept waiting for her to ask what worked best around Dad. She never did. When she asked for my emergency contact, I said Tessa's name. The choice surprised me. Tessa could be selfish, brutal, frightened, and defensive. She would also cross a city in 9 minutes if I fell in a parking lot. Both were true. My mistake had been believing love erased the cost of the first 4 things. By Tuesday, I could read without closing one eye. I worked from my couch for an hour despite Leah's instructions, then stopped when my hand began tingling. Stopping felt unnatural, almost rude. At 3, Tessa called. I need you to cover tonight. No, Dad's doing much better. You would mostly sit there. No, I have a client dinner I cannot miss. Then call the agency. He won't let them in. That's between you and him. You know that isn't true. It is now. She made a sound between a laugh and a gasp. You really mean this? Yes. You'll let me blow up my job. I'm not doing anything to your job. You're refusing to help, knowing what the result will be. I refused before you scheduled the dinner. I had a life before Dad's surgery. So did I. You keep saying that like mine is the reason yours disappeared. No, I'm saying you noticed mine existed only when protecting yours required it. The line went quiet. When Tessa spoke again, her voice was lower. Do you want me to apologize? Yes, for what? That's why it wouldn't help. She hung up. Evan covered the client dinner. Dad called me afterward, furious that Evan had helped him shower. He's my son-in-law. He's also the person who was available. There are boundaries. I stared at the phone. Now you believe in those? That isn't clever. It wasn't supposed to be. Your sister is doing everything good. How can you say that? Because she told me I was using my diagnosis to escape. Now she can see what I was supposedly escaping. So this is punishment. No, it's information. You sound pleased. I'm not. But a small, wounded part of me was. Not because Tessa was suffering. Because the work had finally become visible enough to have a witness. Dad's voice softened. I miss you. The words landed exactly where the earlier ones had. What do you miss? He hesitated. You, he said. What about me? Why are you interrogating everything? Because I need to know whether you miss your daughter or your night nurse. That's a horrible thing to ask. It shouldn't be hard to answer. He became angry again, which was an answer of its own. On Wednesday morning, Tessa showed up at my door wearing yesterday's clothes. Her hair was pulled into a knot. There was a coffee stain on her blouse. No makeup beneath her eyes, and one of Dad's hospital socks clung to the back of her black pants with static. I opened the door wider. She walked in without speaking and dropped onto my couch. What happened? He tried to walk to the bathroom without the walker because I didn't answer fast enough. Did he fall? No. He made it to the doorway, got scared, and yelled my name until I woke up. Is he hurt? No. Where is he now? Evan's there. I sat in the chair across from her. Tessa pressed both palms over her face. I can't do another night. There was no accusation in it, just fact. That doesn't mean I can, I said. I know. The words surprised both of us. She lowered her hands. I called the agency, she said. A woman named Bernice can start this afternoon. 4 hours a day, and she can do an overnight tomorrow. Will Dad let her in? I told him Bernice comes in, or I go home and he can explain to Luis why he's alone. What did he say? He said Mom would be ashamed of us. I looked away. Tessa's eyes filled. I told him Mom had hospice nurses. What did he say? That was different. Despite everything, we laughed. It was exhausted and ugly and almost affectionate. I still can't go back, I said. I didn't come to ask. Why did you come? She stared at the coffee stain on her blouse. To say I understand why you left. It was not yet an apology, but for the first time, she had arrived without asking me to carry anything home. Tessa sat on my couch long enough for Dad's hospital sock to lose its grip and fall onto the rug. She looked down at it. I'm leaving that here. No, it belongs to your branch of the family. You brought it across enemy lines. She picked it up with 2 fingers and dropped it into her purse. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. Tessa followed but did not open cabinets, ask for anything, or tell me how Dad took his eggs. She leaned against the counter and watched me struggle with the lid on the coffee can. Let me, she said. I've got it. You don't. The words hung there. I handed her the can. She opened it and gave it back without comment. We drank at my small kitchen table. Tessa held the mug with both hands, soaking up the heat. I didn't sleep at all, she said. I thought you said you woke up when he yelled. I was unconscious with my eyes open. There's a difference, apparently. He asked me to adjust the recliner 6 times. Then he said it was better where it started. That sounds right. He refused the stool softener because he said his body has always been regular. I smiled into my coffee. And then, she continued, he gave me a detailed update proving that statement is no longer accurate. You wanted facts. Not those facts. For a minute, it was easy. We were 2 sisters complaining about our difficult father, the way we had after every holiday and home repair. Then Tessa's smile faded. I thought you exaggerated him, she said. I set down my mug. Not the medical stuff. Before, all the calls, the constant little things. You were in the group chat. I thought you answered because you liked being needed. Sometimes I did. That made it easy to think you were creating part of it. I probably was. Tessa blinked. You're agreeing with me? I'm saying I trained him to call me by always answering. That doesn't mean the calls weren't real. She rubbed a thumb across a chip in the tabletop. Why did you always answer? The honest reply was humiliating, because he sounded happy when I solved something. Tessa looked up. Dad is happy to see you, I said. He's proud of you. He tells people about your job and the trips you and Evan take. With me, he talks about what I fixed. That's not true. It is. He talks about you constantly. What does he say? She opened her mouth, then looked away. I laughed without humor. Exactly. No. He says you help him. He says you know everything. That's not the same as knowing me. Tessa pushed her coffee aside. Do you know what he says about me when you're not there? That you're busy. He says I'm impressive, then asks when I'm going to settle down. You're married. He means stop traveling and cook more, possibly start quilting. Dad thinks every woman with an idle hand should be producing a blanket. She smiled, but only briefly. He doesn't know me either, she said. He has a version of each of us that makes him comfortable. Your version gets to go home. and yours gets trusted. The old reflex rose between us. I wanted to tell her that trust without choice was not a prize. She wanted me to admit admiration without reliance could feel thin. Neither of us spoke. Finally, Tessa said, "When you told us you were sick, I knew Dad would need me." There was shame in her voice, but not enough to disguise the resentment. "I know," I said. "No. I mean, that was my first thought. Before you cried? Before I understood anything. You said MS, and I thought, what happens to Dad's surgery?" The confession hurt less than the pretending had, so you called it convenient. I called it convenient because if I admitted you were really sick, I had no excuse not to become you. I stared at her. She twisted the wedding band on her finger. And I didn't want to. That's not an apology. "I know. Do you think you're going to give me one?" I'm trying to say the true part first. The answer sounded like something I would have said. I hated that. Tessa looked at my right hand resting on the table. "I'm sorry I accused you of using your diagnosis," she said. "I'm sorry I said it at Dad's table, and I'm sorry I said it to your doctor because I thought if she gave us a list, I could distribute you fairly." I swallowed. "You don't distribute people. I know that now. You knew it before." "Yes." That was better than an excuse. She wiped beneath one eye with her thumb. "I was jealous of you before any of this," she said, "of my glamorous sour cream lifestyle, of how Dad needs you. He needed Mom too. That was different." We both laughed at the phrase. Then Tessa said, "You're the person he trusts when he's scared. I walk into the room and make him feel good. You walk in and make him feel safe. I'm the person he uses when he's scared. Both can be true." I hated that because it was. Tessa left after showering and changing into a pair of my sweatpants that ended 3 inches above her ankles. Before she went, she placed Dad's house key on the entry table beside mine. "You keep it," I said. "He gave it to you." I gave it back. He wouldn't take it. "You did." She looked at the key. "I don't want it," she said. "That's the problem." I picked it up and pressed it into her palm. Keep it until having it doesn't automatically make the nearest woman responsible for him. She closed her fingers around it. Bernice lasted 42 minutes at Dad's house. Tessa called me from her car afterward. He fired her. Can he do that? He told her she was free to leave. That sounds like firing. She asked him to demonstrate getting up safely. He said she was bossy. Did she see the brass bell? I threw it away. Good. He wants you to talk to her. Why? He says she misunderstood his sense of humor. Did he apologize? No. Then she understood it. Tessa was quiet. "I'm not fixing this," I said. "I know." The words still felt new in her mouth. Bernice called Tessa later and said she would return if Dad agreed to a clear list of duties and treated her respectfully. He refused. The following morning, he attempted to shower alone. I learned about it from Evan, who used the phrase, "no actual fall," before saying hello. Dad had gotten into the shower safely. Getting out required lifting his healing leg over the low threshold while standing on a wet surface. Halfway through, he froze. He could not move forward or backward without feeling the operated hip wobble. He stood naked beneath cooling water for 18 minutes before accepting that determination had no traction. His phone was on the vanity. He shouted until the neighbor in the attached townhouse heard him through the wall and called Tessa. Tessa was already at work across town. Evan was farther away. Dad called Bernice. She arrived with the emergency key Tessa had given the agency, turned off the water, wrapped Dad in 2 towels, and helped him out without mentioning that he had fired her. Afterward, she made him coffee and placed a written care agreement on the table. Dad signed it. When he called me that evening, he presented the story differently. "I hired somebody," he said. "I heard. Just temporarily." "Okay. Your sister overreacted about the shower. You were trapped. I was being cautious. While naked. That isn't relevant. It feels relevant." He sighed. "Bernice is coming mornings. She's very professional. I'm glad. She makes coffee too strong. Tell her you like it weak." I did. "And?" She told me to add water. I laughed before I could stop myself. Dad laughed too. The sound brought back Sunday mornings in his kitchen, eggs on the second shelf, and complaints that had once felt like intimacy. Then he said, "You could come by now." The ache returned. "I'm not ready. Bernice is there. I'm not asking you to do anything. You just asked me to come because Bernice is there? I'm saying you wouldn't have to worry. I'm not worried about being alone with you. What are you worried about? That you'll look at me and see everything I stopped doing." He went quiet. "I see my daughter," he said. I wanted to believe him. "Tell me something about her. What kind of game is this?" "It isn't a game. I don't know what you want me to say. That's why I'm not ready." He hung up. My first long-term treatment appointment took most of a Monday. Dr. Shaw and the nurse coordinator helped me choose an infusion therapy that fit the disease activity on my scans and my life as it existed outside Dad's surgery. There were risks to discuss, vaccines to update, blood work to complete, and an insurance company that wanted proof I had failed a cheaper medication before approving the one my doctor recommended. For once, I let the medical office fight a battle without volunteering to help. Tessa drove me to the blood draw. She stayed in the waiting room and did not ask how long it would take. Afterward, we got lunch at a diner between our neighborhoods. She ordered soup. I ordered a baked potato. When the server asked whether I wanted sour cream, Tessa said, "Full fat. We've suffered enough." I laughed so hard that the server looked concerned. Tessa did not ask me to visit Dad. She talked about Evan instead. He had been kind, then distant, then kind in a way that made the distance obvious. He was tired of becoming the solution whenever she promised more than she planned to give. I told him I was doing my best, she said. What did he say? He said my best has office hours. I winced. That sounds like Evan. I apologized. Did you mean it? I'm learning to say the true part first. After lunch, she drove me home and waited until I was inside before leaving. Dad called twice that week. The first time, he complained about Bernice rearranging his pantry so he could reach things without bending. The second, he asked how my blood work went. He did not follow the question with a request. I answered carefully. It was fine. They took 9 tubes. 9? Some were small. That's still a lot of blood. They didn't drain me. Did you eat afterward? Tessa and I went to lunch. What did you have? A baked potato. No protein. There was cheese. That barely counts. His concern came out wearing its usual disguise. I let it stay concern. Luis advanced Dad from the walker to a cane. Bernice reduced her visits to 3 mornings a week, but Dad asked her to stay for coffee on the other 2. He still referred to her as the help when speaking to Tessa and my rehabilitation assistant when speaking to his friends. I learned this without entering his house. My symptoms improved slowly. The double vision disappeared. Sensation returned to most of my palm, though 2 fingers remained numb. I could walk around the block if I rested afterward. Leah let me return to work part-time with strict instructions not to rescue Daniel from European dates. The normal pieces of my life came back looking slightly rearranged. One Sunday, nearly 3 weeks after I returned Dad's key, I called him. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Waiting for the game. Who's coming over?" "Nobody." "Tessa?" "She was here yesterday." "Bernice?" "Not today." The old panic flickered. Dad alone. Dad with a cane. Dad too stubborn to ask for help until it became urgent. I let the panic pass through without turning it into a task. "Do you want company?" I asked. He was quiet. "Yes," he said. "I can come for an hour." "An hour?" "That's what I can do." Another pause. "All right. I'm not bringing groceries. I didn't ask you to. I'm not cooking. There's food. I'm not filling the pill organizer. I can do that. And if you call me dramatic, selfish, or convenient, I leave." His breath sounded close to the phone. "You made your terms very clear. That isn't the same as agreeing." "No," he said. "It isn't." I waited. Finally, he said, "Come watch the first quarter." When I arrived, I stood on the porch with my finger hovering over the doorbell. For the first time in 6 years, I could not let myself in. I pressed the bell. Through the door, I heard the television, the scrape of the cane, and Dad muttering at the lock. It took him almost a minute to open it. You could have used your... He stopped. My what? Nothing. He stepped back. I entered as a guest. The house smelled like coffee and the lemon cleaner Bernice used on the counters. Dad had set out 2 mugs on the table beside the recliner. There was also a plate of crackers, cheese, and neatly folded slices of turkey. You made food, I said. I assembled food. I'm impressed. Don't be patronizing. I'm sincerely impressed by folded turkey. He tried not to smile. The walker had been collapsed and placed against the wall. A black cane stood within reach of his chair. Dad lowered himself carefully, pushing off the arm instead of dropping the last 6 inches. Luis teach you that? I taught Luis a few things, too, I'm sure. The game started. I sat on the couch instead of in the chair beside Dad's medication table. The white basket was gone. His pill organizer rested on a shelf across the room, each day marked in thick black letters. Bernice, label that? I labeled it. Your handwriting improved. She held the marker. For several minutes, we discussed football. Dad disliked both teams, but had selected one to support because the opposing coach looked dishonest. I asked what an honest coach looked like. He pointed at a man whose staff had been fined for cheating 2 seasons earlier. Good instincts, I said. Dad picked up his coffee. Yours is getting cold. I'm drinking it. You always forget. I'm aware. He looked at me, maybe realizing that was one of the things he knew. At the first commercial, he asked about work, not whether I was back, what I was doing. I told him about the quarterly reconciliation and Daniel's continued resistance to American date formatting. Dad listened, then said, maybe he's trying to modernize you. By moving August into April, spring is underrated. The game returned. We watched a quarterback throw an interception and blamed him in unison. It was almost comfortable. That made me more nervous than conflict would have. Comfort had always been the soft surface over which I slid back into old roles. Dad finished his coffee and looked toward the kitchen. For half a second, I expected him to ask for more. He planted the cane and started to rise. I can. I stopped myself. He noticed. I've got it, he said. The phrase had frightened me before. Now he used the chair arm, steadied himself, and waited until his balance settled. I know, I said. He walked to the kitchen, filled his own mug, and came back carrying it in the hand opposite the cane. Halfway across the room, coffee sloshed onto his fingers. He swore. I laughed. Very supportive. You need a travel mug. I'm not drinking coffee out of a toddler cup. Then enjoy your burns. He sat down and wiped his hand on his pants. The first quarter ended. I checked the time. Dad saw me. You're really leaving after an hour. Yes, you just got here, 53 minutes ago. That isn't an hour. I'm giving you 7 free minutes. His mouth pulled tight. I thought this was going well. It is. Then why leave? Because I said I would. To prove a point? To keep a promise to myself. He looked toward the television. A commercial showed a family laughing over pizza, everyone visibly delighted by the presence of melted cheese. I'm not going to ask you to do anything, he said. This isn't only about chores. I know that. Do you? His hand closed around the cane handle. I know you're waiting for me to apologize. I'm not waiting. What does that mean? It means I stopped arranging my life around when you might understand me. He flinched, then covered it with irritation. That doctor gave you a lot of language. She didn't give me any of this. She made me sound like I wanted permission to use you. You did. I wanted to know what was safe for me to do for you, because you had already volunteered. I volunteered before I knew, and after. Because you and Tessa made my illness into a character test. Dad looked down. You agreed with her, I said. I told you I had MS, and you agreed it was convenient. I said the timing made you wonder. Who is you? It's an expression. No. It was you? He set his mug down too hard. Coffee jumped over the rim. I didn't know what multiple sclerosis meant. You didn't ask. I did ask. You asked whether I could still drive. That was not my first question. No. Your first question was whether the doctor was sure. Well, apparently I'm a monster because I didn't respond perfectly to shocking news. I never asked for perfect. What did you want me to say? I wanted you to believe me before a neurologist embarrassed you into listening. Dad looked at me. The anger in his face gave way so suddenly that he seemed tired. Is that what you think happened? Yes. He leaned back in the recliner. The game resumed. Neither of us looked at it. When your mother got sick, he said, she kept telling me it wasn't as bad as it looked. My chest tightened. Mom had metastatic cancer. I know what she had. Then why are we talking about her? Because she made it easier for me. Even at the end, she'd ask me to make toast and I would burn it, and she'd eat the middle and tell me the edges were supposed to be black. I remembered Mom scraping burned toast with a butter knife over the sink. She hated your toast. I know. His voice broke on the last word. I sat still. After she died, he said, you did everything. Not everything. You took care of the funeral home. You canceled her cards. You found her blue sweater after I accused the hospital of losing it. It was in the laundry. You knew where to look. That isn't magic. It felt like it. The television crowd roared. Dad reached for the remote and muted them. You became the person who knew what to do, he said. Tessa came around and made the house feel less empty. You made it function, so you kept me functioning. I relied on you. You built your life on me. I didn't realize how much. I told you. You told me you were tired. You told me I called too often. You complained about groceries and appointments, then you showed up, because when I didn't, you acted hurt. I was hurt. That doesn't mean I did something wrong. No. The words sat between us. Dad rubbed both hands over his face. When you said multiple sclerosis, I heard that you might not always be there, he said. Not just for the surgery, for anything. I waited. And I had already lost your mother. I'm not Mom. I know. I'm not dying. I know that now. Dr. Shaw told you at the appointment that people live active lives for decades. I heard multiple lesions. I heard no cure. I heard unpredictable. He looked at his hands. Then Tessa said convenient, he continued. And for a minute, that was easier. What was easier? Thinking maybe you were making more of it because you didn't want to stay here. If that was true, then you were angry. You weren't sick. The honesty landed harder than denial. So you did think I was using it. Yes. I looked away. Dad's voice became rough. I was wrong. That isn't enough. I know. You watched me drop things. You watched me lose my balance. I told you I couldn't feel my hand. I know. And you made me take care of you anyway. I didn't make you. My eyes snapped back to him. He closed his eyes. Then, more quietly, he said, I made saying no cost too much. The room blurred. I wiped my cheek with the heel of my hand. Dad leaned forward, but he did not reach for me. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry I agreed with her. I'm sorry I let you believe being useful was the price of being close to me. Did you let me believe it, or was it true? He took too long. I don't know, he said. It was not the answer I wanted. It was probably the only honest one. I love you, I said, but I don't trust you with my limits. Dad nodded slowly. What do I do about that? You believe them when you don't like them. That's it? It won't feel like it. I stood. My legs held. Dad glanced at the clock. You have 2 minutes. I know. I could send you home with the turkey. No. The cheese? No. Bernice bought too much, then eat too much cheese. He nodded. At the door, he said, Your sweater's still in the downstairs room. Keep it there. For when you stay. For when I want the sweater. He almost smiled. I opened the door. Mara. I turned. I do know things about you. Like what? You hate cilantro. You read the ending of books when you get anxious. You keep emergency cash in a coffee tin, even though you pay for everything with your phone. You wanted to be a meteorologist until you found out they had to be on television. I stared at him. You hate being late, he continued. But when you are late, it's usually because you stopped for somebody else. My throat closed. Dad looked frightened that he had said too much. You still called my diagnosis convenient, I said. I know, and knowing me makes that worse. I know that, too. I left before 53 minutes became 90. On the porch, I cried again, but not the same way I had on my kitchen floor. This grief had room inside it for something other than abandonment. Dad did not call that night. The next morning, he sent one message. Thank you for coming. No need to answer. I answered anyway. Thank you for making coffee. He replied. It was weak. I began my infusion therapy 2 weeks later. Tessa drove me. Dad asked whether he should come, and when I said no, he did not ask why. He sent a bag through Tessa containing lemon candies, a magazine about national parks, and a travel mug. A note was taped to the mug, not a toddler cup. The infusion center was cold. Tessa sat beside me in a chair that was not designed for comfort and tried to work without making me feel like she was working. Every 20 minutes, she asked whether I needed anything. After the third time, I told her that support could include silence. She closed her laptop. Like this? Exactly. 5 minutes passed. This is horrible, she whispered. I laughed. The medication took hours. I developed a mild headache and chills, but the nurse slowed the infusion and covered me with warm blankets. Tessa tucked them around my feet. She did not post a photograph. Dad texted once, "Thinking of you. Don't reply." Tessa saw the message when I turned my phone over. He's terrified of asking the wrong thing now. He should be. Is that what you want? For a while. She nodded. At the end of the infusion, I was exhausted but steady. Tessa drove me home and heated soup from my freezer. She stayed until I fell asleep on the couch, then left a note instead of waking me. Dad's recovery kept moving. He began outpatient physical therapy twice a week. The first time he needed a ride, he asked Tessa. She said she had a meeting and offered to schedule a car. He took the car. No one called me. Bernice continued coming on Mondays and Thursdays, even after Dad no longer needed physical help. Officially, she organized the kitchen and changed the sheets. Unofficially, they drank strong coffee and argued about daytime television. Tessa told me Dad had started asking her about work without using the conversation to measure when she was free. He asked what my presentation was about, she said. Did you tell him? He regretted it. That's growth. She also told me he had stopped calling her Sunshine. Do you miss it? Yes, she said, which is embarrassing. People miss their cages when they're decorated. That sounds like something Dr. Shaw gave you. I'm developing my own language now. Our jokes came back before our trust did. Trust returned in smaller pieces. Tessa asking before coming over, me saying no without giving a medical reason, her accepting it. She invited me to dinner with her and Evan, then did not treat my attendance as evidence that I could also handle something for Dad. Dad's surgeon eventually cleared him to walk without the cane inside the house. He announced the news to both of us separately, possibly to double the praise. Then he asked if we would come for Sunday dinner. I'm cooking, he said. What are you making? Chicken. Do you know how? I watched you. That doesn't answer the question. 6 o'clock. Bernice wrote down the oven temperature. How long are we expected to stay? Dad was quiet for one beat. As long as you want. I looked at the calendar. The day after my infusion was still circled as a rest day. I can come, I said, but if I'm tired, I'm leaving. I heard you. Hearing had never been the problem. Sunday would tell me whether he believed me. Dad opened the door before I pressed the bell. I saw you pull up. Were you watching from the window? I happened to be near it. You were waiting at the window. Come in before the heat gets out. He stepped aside without trying to take my bag or directing me toward the kitchen. The house smelled like roasting chicken, rosemary, and something faintly scorched. What's burning? Nothing. The smoke detector disagrees. It hasn't gone off. It's considering its options. Dad had set the table with Mom's old blue dishes, 4 places, cloth napkins that still had fold lines from 6 years in a drawer. He'd put a small glass vase in the center with 3 grocery store daisies cut to different heights. I looked toward the kitchen. The sink was empty. A cutting board held chopped carrots in uneven pieces. The chicken sat in the oven beneath a sheet of foil. "You did all this?" Bernice supervised over the phone. "That means no." She gave advice. I executed. "Evan and Tessa aren't here yet?" "Your sister said 6. It's 6:10. She runs late. You tell her that? I prefer living." Dad walked without the cane. His steps were careful, but the old hitch in his right side was gone. At the recliner, he lowered himself smoothly and looked at me to make sure I'd noticed. "Very nice," I said. "Luis says I have excellent range. Luis tells you what you need to hear. He says you're difficult. He has never treated me. He can tell." I sat on the couch. Dad reached for the remote, then stopped. "Do you want the game on?" "No." "What do you want?" "I don't know. We could talk." He looked suspicious. "About what?" "Normal things. You usually criticize my television. That is a normal thing." He turned it on, but left the volume low. Tessa and Evan arrived at 6:17. Tessa carried the same polished wooden salad bowl she'd brought the night I told them about my diagnosis. Evan had a bottle of wine and a bakery pie. "No cinnamon rolls?" Dad asked. "The medical establishment has spoken," Tessa said. "The medical establishment lives to eliminate pleasure." Evan held up the pie. "There's still apple." Dad brightened. "That's fruit." Tessa kissed him and turned toward me. "How are you?" "Good. Actually, a little tired. The infusion was yesterday." "I know. I know what you meant. I'm okay." She nodded without checking my face for evidence that I was lying. Dad stood. "We need to carve the chicken." The old sentence would have meant, "Mara, carve the chicken." My body reacted before my mind did. I started to rise. Dad pointed at Evan. "You know how to do that?" Evan looked startled. "More or less." "Good. Come learn." Tessa and I watched them walk into the kitchen. "That was new," she said. "What, Dad, acknowledging your husband has hands? He called me this morning to ask whether you liked rosemary. He knows I like rosemary. He said he wanted to be sure. What did you tell him?" "That you hate it." I looked at her. She smiled. "I told him you like it." "You've changed. Dr. Shaw prescribed maturity. Dinner was surprisingly edible. The chicken was dry near the edges but moist in the middle. Dad had put too much butter on the carrots and no salt in the potatoes. He waited until we had all taken a bite. "Well?" "Chicken is dead," Tessa said. So that part worked. Dad looked at me. "It's good." "You mean that?" "It could use salt." He relaxed. "There's salt." He reached for the shaker, then paused with his hand over it. "The doctor said I should cut down." "You can still put some on the food," I said. "That's what Bernice says." "Then why ask us?" "I didn't ask. You placed your hand over the salt and stared at your daughters. It's my table." Evan laughed into his napkin. Dad passed me the shaker. For the first half of dinner, we stayed in safe territory. Tessa described a disastrous client meeting where 2 executives had used the phrase thought leadership 11 times without producing a thought. Evan told us the neighbor had begun playing drums at midnight and stopped only after Evan knocked on the door and offered to join with a tambourine. Dad asked about my work. "Daniel entered July 4th as April 7th, I said. "Patriotic in 2 countries, Evan said. "That's how errors become features," Tessa replied. We laughed. Then Dad said, "I told Bernice you're doing better." The table quieted slightly. "I am." She asked whether the medicine fixed it. "It doesn't fix MS. It lowers the chance of more damage." I told her that. "What did she say?" "That she knows. Her sister has rheumatoid arthritis. She said people like to hear the word treatment and imagine the word cure." Dad pushed a carrot around his plate. "I think I did that. You wanted the steroids to make me available again." "Yes." Tessa looked at him. We both did. Evan set down his fork. Dad glanced at me. I told Tessa I was wrong to agree with her. Tessa's expression sharpened. You told me I shouldn't have said it. I also said I shouldn't have agreed. After you spent 3 weeks letting everyone call it my phrase. It was your phrase. And your opinion. Dad opened his mouth. Tessa held up one hand. No, you don't get to turn me into the only cruel person because you said it more politely. The room became still. This was the moment when I would usually intervene. I would translate Dad's defensiveness into fear, soften Tessa's anger into disappointment, and make sure nobody left the table before dessert. I ate a carrot. Dad looked at me. I reached for another. He turned back to Tessa. You're right, he said. She blinked. I let you say the ugly part, he continued. Then I agreed in a way that sounded reasonable. Yes, I'm sorry. Tessa looked down at her plate. I'm sorry, too, she said. I was afraid all the work would fall on me. It did, Dad said. For 3 days. Felt longer. It was longer. Bernice came. After I nearly got divorced over your compression socks. Evan raised a finger. For the record, divorce was never discussed. I discussed it internally. That's healthy. Dad smiled, then grew serious again. I made both of you responsible for things I should have handled, he said. Tessa leaned back. You had just had surgery. You did need help. I know. But I made refusing help from other people into your problem. I looked at him. He noticed. Bernice gave me language too, he said. Her language probably has more swearing. You'd be surprised. No, I wouldn't. The apology did not erase the dinner when they relaxed after I promised to serve them. It did not return the days I had spent caring for Dad while inflammation interfered with signals in my brain. It did not make Tessa's second use of convenient less deliberate. But there was something different about hearing them speak without waiting for me to rescue the conversation. They were carrying their own parts, awkwardly and without style. That was enough for one meal. After dinner, Evan and Dad cleared the table. Tessa stood to help. I stayed seated. My body was heavy with post-infusion fatigue, the kind that made every movement feel like it had to be requested in writing. Tessa stacked plates, then looked at me. I waited. Do you want pie? She asked. Yes. She carried the plates into the kitchen. Dad returned with 4 forks. The pie needs cutting, he said. I looked at him. He caught himself. I can cut pie, he added. Good. He cut it badly. My slice was mostly crust, and Tessa's was so large she accused him of trying to send a message about her marriage. Dad gave Evan the smallest piece, then corrected the portions by scooping pie from Tessa's plate onto his. It was undignified and fair. The coffee was stronger than Dad used to make it. Bernice corrupt you? I asked. She says weak coffee is brown water. She's right. Don't encourage her. I checked the time. I had stayed almost 2 hours. Dad noticed, but he did not comment. When Tessa and Evan left, Tessa hugged me at the door. Call me tomorrow? If I'm awake? Text me a punctuation mark. No. 1 period. I'm not proving consciousness on demand. She smiled. Fine. Call when you want. Dad closed the door behind them. For a moment, we stood in the hallway with the muted television behind us and the kitchen visible at the other end. Plates were stacked beside the sink. Coffee cups sat on the table. The foil from the chicken lay folded on the counter. I felt the old pull toward all of it. Dad followed my gaze. Leave it. I wasn't doing anything. You were thinking loudly. I learned from you. He picked up his cane from beside the entry table, though he had not used it all evening. Bernice is coming tomorrow. She doesn't wash Sunday dishes. She will if I pay her. Or you could wash them. I had surgery. The surgeon cleared you. He cleared my hip. He didn't assign chores. I laughed, then yawned so hard my eyes watered. Dad's expression changed. You can stay in the downstairs room, he said. There it was. Not a demand, not yet, but the old path opening beneath our feet. I'm going home. It's late. It's 9. You're tired. That's why I'm leaving. You shouldn't drive if you're... My vision is fine. I'm tired from the infusion and I want my own bed. He glanced toward the downstairs hallway. The room's made up. I know. It would be easier. For who? The words landed between us, familiar and sharp. Dad closed his mouth. I could see the argument form. I could almost hear it. He was offering, not asking. I was turning everything into a test. Families should be able to care about each other without negotiating every sentence. His fingers tightened around the cane. Then he let the argument go. Okay, he said. I waited. Okay? Go rest. The sentence was so simple that I did not trust it. Dad looked uncomfortable under my stare. What? Nothing? You said you were leaving. I am. Then text me when you're home. Not call so he could hear my voice and keep me talking. Not send proof of my vision or explain my fatigue. Just text. I put on my coat. Dad opened the door for me. Cold air moved through the hallway. My car waited at the curb beneath the yellow porch light. Dinner was good, I said. The chicken was dry, a little. You said it was good. It was both. He nodded. Both can be true. That's Tessa's line. I listen sometimes. I've heard rumors. I stepped onto the porch. Mara. I turned. Dad held something in his open palm, his house key. Tessa must have returned it. The metal was worn smooth, the blue plastic cap scratched where it had rubbed against my other keys for years. You don't have to take it, he said. I looked at the key. Why are you giving it back? Because I want you to have one. For emergencies? If you want. For groceries? No. Appointments? No. Anything you expect me to do? He shook his head. Then not yet, I said. His hand closed around the key. Disappointment crossed his face, but he did not turn it into injury. All right. Ask me again sometime. I will. I walked to my car. Dad remained in the doorway while I started the engine. In the kitchen behind him, the cups were still on the table, and the plates were still beside the sink. He lifted one hand. I waved and drove away. At home, I placed my keys in the ceramic dish by the door. There was room on the ring where Dad's key had been. I did not feel empty looking at it. My phone buzzed. Dad. Home? Me? Home? 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Dad. Good. Sleep. I set the phone down, and I did.